Good morning, everyone. In accordance with Section 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. I have a script here, but I'm going to leave it just for a second. I think it's all important for us to just take a moment to remember that today is the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and also to remember the appreciation that we have for the great sacrifices that were made by many people for the freedoms that we enjoy today. Before I continue, I'd just like to introduce to you the members of the panel this morning. I'm Don Taylor. I'm the chair of the meeting. On my far left is Natalia Popovic. On my immediate left is Stan Komorik. On my near right is Laura Alderson, and on my far right is Bill Dalton. And we have our Deputy Secretary Treasurer acting, Phil Carvalino, and other folks that support us in the pit and at the end of the desk here. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Committee of Adjustment public hearings are now conducted in a hybrid in-person and virtual format. Some applicants and participants will make their submissions in person, and others will participate virtually by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform. The meetings are also streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel, and anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. Those who want to participate virtually and have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone and have the option of participating via video or audio only. All virtual participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, you will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to panelist when your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. At all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. For both in-person and virtual participants, Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline. Those participating through WebEx are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. People attending in person today who want to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must fill out a decision request card, and they're sitting on the rail at the front here. And those participating virtually need to submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address because the Committee of Adjustment and the Toronto local appeal body, TLAB, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, you may be able to appeal the decision to the Toronto local appeal body or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, the provincial government amended the Planning Act and generally removed rights of third parties to appeal Committee of Adjustment decisions. Only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, specified persons, and public bodies, as those terms are defined in the Planning Act, are permitted to appeal decisions of the Committee of Adjustment. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. Any presentation or other materials you wish to submit to the committee must have been emailed in advance of the hearing. Staff and committee members cannot accept materials at the hearing. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and will make a presentation to the committee on the application. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if substantially revised to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then, individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Generally, we first call on speakers in the hearing room and then those participating through WebEx. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Before we hear the first item, we need confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Could I have a motion to do that?
Got it. Minutes of May 23rd.
May 20th.
I would like to move approval of those minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Komoric.
I'll second that.
Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Okay, the minutes of the May 23rd meeting have been adopted. Are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff for items in this morning time slot? Staff? No. I have a declaration of interest to make. Two of my friends are in attendance today, possibly to speak to item number 5. 2 Riverstone Drive. So I will be recusing myself when that item comes up. Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, okay. Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have you received any requests for deferral in this morning's time slot? Item 8. 26 Hearn Hill. And do we have Oriana Nanoa? Hello, Ms. Nanoa. If you could just explain to the committee your reasons for requesting deferral today?
Yep. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Oriana Nanoa, planner at Design Plan Services, Inc., 900 the East Mall, Suite 300. Through you, Mr. Chair, deferrals being requested due to improper public notice, due to a missing variance pertaining to the law coverage. Therefore, we're requesting a deferral to ensure proper public notice and request a new hearing date.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the hearing room that came to speak to 26 Hearn Hill? No? And I don't believe there's anyone online?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. No one online.
Okay, then we can proceed into committee for a motion on the request to defer item 8, 26 Hearn Hill.
Mr. Chair, I'll bring that motion on the basis of the request by the applicant and to ensure proper notice.
Thank you, Ms. Popovic. A seconder? Ms. Alderson, thank you very much. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Your item's been deferred and you'll be advised of a hearing date. And the interested parties will get notice of the new hearing date as well at the appropriate time. Okay, so we can now proceed to the rest of the items in order. And the first item we have, number 1, is 4 Courtsfield Court. Is Rocco Schipano in the room or online?
Virtual, Mr. Chair, and we have one area resident that is potentially interested in speaking, but we can call upon them when it's their chance.
Sure, okay,
Thank you.
good. Thanks for pointing that out.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning to you.
I have a little presentation. I'm not too sure if you wanna.
Yeah,
hear it.
I think we could benefit from a presentation. Particularly, we do have some opposition on this. So, yeah, I think it would be
Yes.
helpful to you and us for you to present briefly to us. Thank you. Just
Of
before I
course,
do
yeah,
that,
thank you. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, I'll be very brief.
yeah,
it's a
okay.
very
I
simple-
I mentioned the opposition. You also have quite a bit of support. I think 10 letters of support.
Yeah.
And there's an order to comply associated with this as well. So, yeah, please
Right,
proceed
right.
then.
Unfortunately, there was a very complicated divorce with the family. So anyway, so Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good morning. For the records, my name is Rocco Schipano, and I am the applicant and the designer for the application before you. And we're seeking relief for 3 variances. We're really dealing with the 2 platforms and the rear landscaping. We have consulted with the immediate neighbors, and as you see, we have 10 letters of support. The Vitesse family have lived here for many years, and they just need some extra platforms for the kids because the house is not really a 2-story, but it's really a raised bungalow. So we need immediate sightseeing, for the kids. As we said, the variances are only 3, and it's a very simple application. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, panel, any questions for Mr. Schipano? Okay. We do have a registered speaker who apparently is in the room today, Eugene Shokan. Yeah, Mr. Shokan, could you come up and repeat your name and give us your address, please?
Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, you can hear me now.
Yeah, just for everybody's edification, you need to be very uncomfortably close with that microphone.
Really? Okay. Anyway, if I'm not heard, please let me know. Okay. I found Mr.
Sorry,
Schipano's.
your name and address?
Oh, I'm
Yep.
sorry. Eugene Cholkan, Cholkan, and I live at 6 Courtsfield Crescent.
Okay.
Frankly, I find Mr. Schipano's explanation and reasoning for working outside of zoning bylaw regulations to be very fleeting and simple. And I don't believe it's that simple. There have been things going on at this house for many years. This has started and stopped, this construction. My questions that I would like to have answered are, I've seen a drawing from July 2022, and my question is, was a permit obtained before the work was started? If a permit was obtained, is this the basis, this drawing the basis on which the permit was given? Then, of course, if the permit was given, I really don't understand how it could have been with all of the things on the drawing that don't comply. I don't know whether this question is in order, but I have a question as to whether city officials have determined that the list of violations is a complete list of nonconformity, I have some concerns about the soft landscaping coverage and whether
Okay,
that's been.
you can assume that this is an accurate listing of the 3 variances that are required to legalize the
Okay,
not a proposal, it's there, but
yeah, okay.
yeah, they're accurate.
And I will comment that probably the most critical objections have come from people who are very close to the property, and that the support has been obtained from a fair number of properties that are not, property owners that are not that close. And all of those were based on a form letter of support that was prepared by Mr. Shapano's firm, that I know my neighbor was walking around the street just asking people to sign. So I would consider giving weight to which comments were more thoughtful. If this has been an unwitting, unfortunate situation for the owners of 4 Courtsfield, I wouldn't want to see them incur any further financial difficulties because of the situation they've came into. But like many other situations in the city, I'm not happy that people can do things that are not in accordance with bylaws and then request adjustments.
Okay, thank you. I'll just, we'll turn things back to Mr. Shapano for a rebuttal, but I will say that our job as a committee of adjustment is not to really reflect on or consider the circumstances that arose. We look at simply the variances that are requested and determine whether or not they meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. So in other words, we treat this as a proposal, that as if it doesn't exist. So it's just to sort of keep that in mind. So we don't have any other speakers, I don't believe.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. No other
Okay,
speakers.
Mr. Shapano, would you please present your rebuttal to Mr. Cholkan's comments?
Yes, thank you. I do appreciate the comments from Mr. Eugene. So again, yes, there was a permit in 2021. I don't remember exactly the date. I just arrived from Italy last night, so I'm still jet lagged. I didn't have the time to go over other files, but there was a permit for a side, I believe it was the, well, considering the lot shape, which is a pie shape, kind of a sort of a circle, we'll consider that the front. So the front, there was a front patio opening, so there was a permit. I guess after with the COVID that happened and the divorce in between the couple, so things got a little bit more complicated, and therefore we're here just to legalize what's there today, and of course getting the permits. And you know, if we would have to comply with all the bylaws, with all the respect, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be expanding, you know, other scope of work. So I believe the work is minor, and the variances are minor in nature, and then it fits the 4 test. And responding to the letters, those are standard letters where we do present the drawings to the neighbors. We show the drawings. They have an understanding of the actual scope of work. As you can see from the site plan here, that it's already on the screen, there are 2 platforms which they're very small, just to give a little bit extra of enjoyment of the property, children, and the entire family. Again, we do apologize on behalf of the Bethesda family of any debris or any other construction that's been there, but we have to understand divorce, they're not easy and they're not simple. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shapano. Panel, any questions for Mr. Shapano? Or Mr. Cholkan? I neglected to ask about questions for him. No, so we're good. So let's go into committee then for a decision.
I do
Oh,
have a question
sorry.
of the neighbor. Sir, is your primary concern the balcony right beside your residence? I'm looking at Street View right now, and it looks like it's pretty close to where your driveway is. That particular balcony, I think it's off their dining room. I'm not sure.
It's if you're talking the one about on the north side of the property,
It's closest to your driveway and garage.
right.
Is that your primary concern?
I'm not overly, I can't really complain about that, even though I'm not a fan of it. You know, if anything, there's another structure that they built, a gazebo on the property, which is extremely close to the property line. I'm not really sure, but that's not mentioned in this application. So I would assume that it's
It is actually part of the
Yeah, it's
application.
listed.
yeah, and it's
Legalizing to maintain the front.
yeah, and it's a little hard to tell where it is exactly, because I know that the fence that they built does encroach on our property, actually, at the rear by about 12 meters. It's not huge, but again, that's how the work was conducted, and without that due care.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, panel? Okay, let's go into committee then for a decision. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So we need a motion.
Okay, just reviewing the neighbors' comments and trying to find, I mean, the gazebo is not actually mentioned as a variance. The variances really pertain to the two balconies and the deficiency in the landscaping area. I would maintain that the landscaping deficiency is minor. It's not what we like to see, but it is relatively minor. And on balance, I believe the application does meet the 4 tests, and I would therefore move approval.
Is there a seconder for Mr. Moore?
Could I make a friendly amendment to that? On this particular, I think this is the balcony that is probably the most egregious in terms of the next door neighbor, and I'm just wondering if the applicant would consider putting a privacy screen or attaching something to that so it's not as transparent. I'm wondering if that would make it worse or better as far as the neighbor goes.
Do you want to ask the neighbor?
Hmm?
Do you want to ask the neighbor first?
I don't know. Sure.
Well, why don't we ask the neighbor, and then if he's agreeable to it, we can
add
ask
that.
the
We
agent
can
to
add
see.
that as a condition.
Mr. Cholkan?
Frankly, I would not require that at this point in time. I've rarely seen them use this deck or the other.
Okay.
I mean, there's a two-sided sword.
And yes, it is a two-sided thing, and if someone in the future wants privacy on that deck, it would be a wise thing for them to do.
But you're not
something like
requiring
that.
that of this decision.
No.
And
Thank you.
by adding that privacy screen, it also adds bulk to that,
Mm-hmm.
to that balcony, so that's the two-sided sword.
Yeah, it might be worse.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. In that case, I'll second the motion as is.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? So we have 4 in favor and Mr. Dalton opposed. So the application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Chapano. Thank you, Mr. Cholkan. We can now move on to item 2, which is 131 Perry Crescent. Purpose of the application is to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. And my notes say we have the agent Antonella Wild participating virtually. Ms. Wild?
Good morning, Mr. Tanner, members of the
Good
committee.
morning. Yeah, this is, there's 3 variances here. We've got no agency comments, no conditions, very clear, very straightforward, very easy to understand. subject to my panel's concurrence, I don't think we need a presentation.
Mr. Chair, as a quick note, though, there is an area resident virtually for this item.
Ah,
Thank you.
okay. Yes, there
The
is.
area-
I'm sorry. Okay. Given the fact that there's an area resident who wishes to speak to this, perhaps you could take a few seconds and give us the highlights of your application.
Yes, I just wanted to know if the area resident is actually the owner, so he has no objection. He's just listening in, actually. So if you'd still like a presentation, I'd be
No.
happy to do so.
With that new information, no. Thank you.
Can we
That's
just
great.
confirm with the area resident that it is the
I'm going to do that.
owner then? Okay.
Jason Kaya. Kaya.
Yeah, I'm super sorry. I was too eager to get into this meeting. I sincerely apologize.
Are you the owner?
I am, yes.
So you're interested in the outcome of this in a positive way? And you-
Slightly so. My wife and kids are too.
Okay. You don't want us to consider refusing this application? Okay.
If you could not, I would, yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
My list didn't say one way or the other, so I appreciate that. Thank
Let's be safe, right?
you. Thank you.
Okay, so then let's move right into committee for a decision. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I submit that in all of the circumstances, this is a straightforward matter. I believe that the lack of any concerns from staff or neighbors is helpful, and I move to approve as is. I do not see any conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Popovic. Is there a seconder for Ms.?
I'll second that.
Mr. Dalton, thank you very much. All in favor? That is approved unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Wild. Thank you, Mr. Kaya or Kaya. We can now move on to item 3, 217 Edenbridge Drive. We have Peter Giordano as agent. The purpose of this application is to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage, a new front porch, new rear covered terrace, and a new covered patio and cabana in the rear yard. We have 8 variances. We have 3 conditions of approval requested by community planning. And we have 3 letters of support. Mr. Giordano, are you available online or in person? Online?
I'm online, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Again, let me just check in with the panel. I don't really think we need a fulsome presentation on this, unless anybody wishes one. No, again, similar to the last one, I think this is pretty straightforward. There are 3 planning conditions. I guess I would ask if you're aware of those and okay with them.
Aware of those, and we actually submitted revised drawings reflective of those 3 changes. And I will note too that we have 6 letters of support. It's almost
Yes.
all of the neighbors surrounding us.
Noted, yep. Okay, so you're okay to, if we have any questions, we'll just proceed on that basis?
Absolutely.
Okay. Panel, any questions for Mr. Giordano?
If no one has any questions, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Then go and make a motion.
I believe this application meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. It's very straightforward and move for approval subject to community planning's conditions, even though I believe you had said that they had revised the drawings already, but let's just make it, contingent on CP.
That would be
conditions.
wise.
I'll second
Seconder?
Also, I just wanted to
Oh.
add too, TRC is okay with it, but still requires a permit. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you know that. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Dalton, you've seconded Ms. Alderson's motion?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? That's approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Giordano. We can now move on to item 4, which is 400 Carlingview Drive. Purpose is to construct a 1-story south and west side warehouse addition. There are 2 variances, one for loading space in the front yard and one for loading space access through a main wall that faces a street. We have no agency comments or conditions. I don't believe we have any resident or neighbor registered to speak on this?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Electronically or virtually? Mr. Moore, Nicholas Moore is the agent. Mr. Moore?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, okay.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm looking at this and thinking it's pretty straightforward, unless we don't need, I don't think we need a presentation. The panel agrees with me, so
Yeah.
are you okay if we have a question or two? We'll just leave it at that?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do that then. So panel, any questions for Mr. Moore before we proceed? No, no, yes, no? Okay, no questions. So let's move into committee for a decision.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe the application meets the 4 tests, and I'm happy to move approval without any conditions.
Okay, thank you. And a seconder?
I second that
Ms.
motion.
Alderson, thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, I am now going to leave the room because of my declaration of interest. And see you later.
Thanks, Don. Okay. So item 5, and I'll just say right off the offset that right off the beginning that staff have requested this item to be deferred. This is an application to Riverstone Drive. It is an application for a second-story addition above the existing dwelling and to convert the existing detached garage into a garden suite. There are 7 variances being requested, and Forestry is requesting condition 2, and Planning is requesting deferral. So if we could start with the applicant.
Mr. Chair, it's Jonathan Benskowski.
Hey, Jonathan. Can you please
Mr. Chair.
give us your opinion on whether you're in agreement with deferring this item?
And Mr. Chair, and Jonathan, before we dive into it real quick, I just want to bring to your attention there are no other area speakers present, at least online, and not.
There are in person, though.
Not to my knowledge, there is not anyone in person either. No, we can do an ask though.
Is there anyone here to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Because I was under the impression that that was my Mr. Taylor recused himself.
We've got nobody on my list at the very
Okay.
least, but that's okay. It's better to safe than sorry.
All
Okay,
right.
sorry, Jonathan.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Sorry about site morning committee. I don't see the request for deferral anywhere, Mr. Chair.
It was a late.
On the AIC.
It was a late item.
We'll look to share it on screen for you, Jonathan, and everybody else.
Jonathan, I also have
Okay,
a concern in that I don't see any drawings for this proposed second floor addition as part of the package.
There is no proposed second floor addition to the dwelling. This is only for the garden suite.
Well, but the
It's a
purpose.
second floor on the existing.
Okay, but the
in the
purpose of the
existing garage,
application
Mr.
is
Chair.
stated as to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling.
Dwelling. Yeah, that's incorrect, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so then we have a notice issue as well.
Mr. Chair, I think under 451811, I mean, it's an incorrect notice, but we're not actually proposing that. So I don't know if it would be an incorrect notice because we're not actually proposing a second story addition.
Okay, can we look at the planning report, Jonathan? If you haven't seen it, it's up on the board. It's up on the screen now.
Okay. Is there any way that it could be zoomed in a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So the reason for deferral is item number 1 and 2. So we'll scroll up now for item 1 and 2 for your review.
I'm wondering if this is related to the second story addition that is incorrectly identified, Mr. Chair, because it's saying missing or incomplete or minor variances. This is not done through a waiver. This is done through a zoning review.
Okay, but that was my confusion when I read this file as well. I thought, if you're asking for a second-story addition, why aren't you providing us materials for it?
Yeah,
So-
no, there is. It's only yeah, for lack of a better term, it's a top-up of the existing garage for the garden suite. There's no alteration proposed to the existing
Yeah,
dwelling.
I get that, but that's not what your purpose is, and that's why I think there's going to be confusion. If there's confusion amongst us and confusion amongst staff, there's clearly going to be confusion, to people who receive notice. And for that reason, I believe it's incorrect notice.
Well, I mean, Mr. Chair, again, I'm in your hands when it comes to that. I can tell you, I spoke to the adjacent neighbor, who has no concerns with the proposal, who did understand the proposal. I did speak with him yesterday.
Okay, I believe there was a letter in the late materials as well, where someone was questioning whether the main house is going to be converted into a fourplex. So there's been some discussions with neighbors around that, I guess.
The dwelling, it will be converted to a fourplex. The permit will be issued any day. But that's, again, not a part of this. That was an as-of-right condition to convert the dwelling into a fourplex.
Okay, so that's going on as well. And it just, to me, that's just a sort of a whole basket of confusion going on.
Well, then, Mr. Chair, I mean, I think if there is this much confusion, then I guess a deferral might be warranted to clean up that confusion.
That's kind of where I'm coming from, but I just wanted to get your input on it. And thank you for the clarifications. Okay, if there's no other speakers, then
I'm happy to make a motion for deferral. I believe this is a complicated situation, and we certainly have a notice issue. So, let's err on the side of caution and defer this application.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair, on the basis of the, as discussed, the possibility for confusion and fresh notice requirement.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor for deferral. All in favor? Okay, the item is deferred. Thank you, Mr. Binkowski. I don't know if someone needs to grab Mr.
We'll get the chair, yes.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to item 6. (19) Blair Athol Crescent.
Mr. Chair, while you bring that up, I want to bring to your attention, there is an area resident listed on my list of speakers, but they are not present on the call at this time. We can double check if they're in person or not. Additionally,
That's Gina Scarcella and Rico Asta?
correct. Are either of you folks in the chambers by chance? No, Mr. Chair, they are not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stan Macau is agent participating virtually. Mr. Macau? You available, sir?
Now good.
Okay, here we go. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Stan
can,
Macau.
thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward one again, I think. We don't have, we have community planning requesting 3 conditions for approval. We have an okay from Ravina Natural Features, and we have a support letter. Pretty straightforward. Do you mind if I'll just ask my panel colleagues if we require a presentation? Sir? I'm going to ask you anyway if you want a presentation. Okay. Mr. Macco, I don't know if you've hung up or you're available or...
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy to give a presentation or answer any questions.
We'll just, okay,
I
then.
did want to,
You just want to what?
yeah, please proceed. Go ahead.
Okay, so any questions, panel? We have no questions. We have Gina Scarcella and Rico Asta potentially interested in participating.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, no one on the line and no one in the chambers. What I mean to say is they're not present.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we can proceed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr.
then-
Chairman, I would just like to point out a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, so we did have neighbor support. I don't know if you saw the list that was submitted, but there was quite extensive neighbor support from adjacent neighbors, including the neighbor on the west and east who gave a verbal. And planning has more or less supported the application because we did remove some of the variances that were not required. So we're happy to, move forward with the application as shown. There was one request by planning that I thought was kind of unusual, and that was for the bird-friendly glass at the back of the house, which I don't really think is necessary, because if you look at the rear south elevation, this is a very traditional style house with small window panes, roughly 12 and a half, 14 inches by 8 inches high. Those are the kind of panes that birds do perceive versus a modern house where there is sort of like wall-to-wall glass with no bars in it. So I think that specific condition by planning is kind of redundant because of the design of the house.
So,
But otherwise, we're willing to accept the other conditions.
so you do not accept that condition of community planning?
I really think it's redundant. If you look at the style, maybe there was not an understanding of the style of the house, but it's a very traditional house, and really with the bars, it is already bird-friendly glass intrinsic to the sort of architecture of the house.
Could I suggest that if we move to approve this application, we include that condition that you have a problem with, and you can have a discussion with community planning on whether or not it's redundant as you feel it is. I don't feel
Okay, that's
comfortable
fine.
ignoring a comment from an agency like community planning or any others that comment on these applications on the spot. I don't like not considering their comments.
Okay.
So if we
All
were to
right,
move to
I
approval,
respect that.
would you be okay with that? We could impose it,
Yeah.
and then you sort it out with community planning later.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just putting a note on the file that is to be reviewed with community planning on whether this is really a requirement
Well,
for the style of architecture.
Actually, I am looking at the rear view, and all the windows there have panes in them, so he's right. They're not large, modern, expansive windows.
I think it's a standard condition that planning imposes on any house that rears or faces a ravine.
I know.
And for what it's worth, I've had a bird fly into my windows, and they have panes in them as well, traditional style. So.
Okay, I'll work that through with community planning. Thank you.
Okay, and make sure you take a note too, because the onus is going to be on you to deal with community planning on this, not us.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
So we have a revised
Yeah.
application. We have 3 requested conditions from community planning. Could we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will bring a motion on the basis that the revised notice has reduced the number of variances requested. I believe it meets the 4 tests, subject to all 3 conditions of planning to be included.
Okay, is there a seconder for Ms. Popovic's motion?
I can second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Alderson. All in favor? That is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. McCall. Moving on to item 7571 Renforth Drive. The purpose of the application is to construct a new attached garage along the south side of the dwelling, a new garden suite in the rear yard with an attached garage along the north side of the garden suite. There are 11 variances. We have urban forestry conditions 1 and 2. Transportation services conditions, 3 of them. We have a support letter, 9 letters of opposition, and in additional materials, we have a multiplex zoning amendment and support material. Daniel Vincani? And we have 6 registered speakers.
So, Mr. Chair, a quick note on that. I have 5 of the signed up speakers noted as being present, whether it's virtual or in person, and then we have 1 additional late addition that might be on your list, might not be, but
Yes, it is.
they are in chambers as well.
Rich
Correct.
Kostoyak. Okay.
So in total, we have 6 speakers aside from the agent is what I have so far. Thank you. The only one I don't have a note in, and we can double check, is Mark Wolochowski is the only fellow I don't have as listed.
So
But he may be present in the chamber. Mark?
Cleona Dickey, Lauren Dickey.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. So Mark is here, but he doesn't want to speak. So perfect.
Sorry?
The area resident, Mark W., he is present.
He is here.
But does not want to speak.
Okay, let's start with Daniel for his presentation.
Hello? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today regarding 571 Ranford Drive. I was approached by the owners earlier this year in order to assist them with design solutions regarding their development of their property. It was clear from the get-go that this property is unique, one of a kind, and the only property and parcel of land that fronts onto Ranford Drive. The owners were always puzzled at this condition and were always wondering what was possible with this property. And they came to conclusion that a garden suite would be beneficial for them and their 3 sons. They're a close-knit family. Currently, they all live together, and ideally, they would like to move back to the property as it's being rented right now, renovate the property and build a garden suite so they can be in proximity to one another. It is important to notice that the existing configuration of the lot possesses some challenges from a personal point of view and from a planning perspective. The main challenge being is that there's a lack of privacy in the backyard for the family to enjoy their outdoor space. Hence, the family's hesitation moving back into this property. Their backyard is fully exposed to the sidewalk, pedestrian sidewalk on Oxenden Crest. The neighboring property is facing on Oxenden Crest and is also buttressed by the 2 adjacent neighbors, number 73 and number 77. From a planning perspective, as it stands, the current condition is a deviation from the standard built form, and it appears as if it's a vacant land from Oxenden Crest, as the building is pushed so much back into the lot. Thus, the introduction of the garden suite will in fact fill this void and establish and restore as intended. The dwellings are relatively kept in consistent scale, height, and with common physical characteristics found in the neighborhood, such as the attached garage and the concrete porch. The additional coverage that's being asked for here today is exclusively for the attached garage of the garden suite and the canopy behind it. We made sure from the get-go that the footprint area of the garden suite stayed within 60 square meters of what is required by the bylaw. the goal is for the garden suite to be integrated within the neighborhood context. So are the wishes of the homeowners. They want to belong and be part of this neighborhood. In other words, by building the garden suite as such, they no longer would have to worry about being the only property facing on the other side. Whereas now they could kind of face the opposite end of the street and be like a normal neighborhood. This is by no means an overdevelopment of the lot, but a realistic solution to this dilemma. The combined coverage of the existing dwelling with the attached garage and the proposed garden suite with the attached garage is approximately 29% of the lot area, whereas 33% of the lot area is allowed to build a new dwelling on the lot. So in which case it's 4% less than what the requirement is. Therefore, it would be fair to say that this is not an overdevelopment of the lot. Given the inverse nature of this lot, the angular planes, I don't believe they're applicable to this case because the garden suite is positioned parallel to the two houses facing on Oxenden Crest and poses no issues with respect to massing or height, given that the garden suite has a limitation in height versus a new detached dwelling.
Could you wrap up, please, Daniel? We've got 10 seconds.
Okay. I would just like to point out that this is a unique scenario and requires a unique solution to it. Okay, what we're proposing here today is kind of the missing middle. It's a form of gentle densification, which a lot of families in the city are looking
I have
forward
to ask you to wrap now.
Yeah.
You're over time. I don't like going beyond time. I don't think it's fair to others. So,
Okay.
okay, thanks. I think we've heard
Thank
the
you.
essence of your position on this. Any question? Sorry, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel before he sits down?
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Which I think I'd like to get. I was going to save them for later, but I think I want to give you some time to try to figure some of these out. So
Okay.
while the other people do their deputations, I might give you that time. Okay? I'll give you my biggest question first, and then I'll hit the smaller ones. I wanted to find out what the combined square footage is of the garden suite. If you take are you including the basement in your square footage calculations?
The basement never counts in square footage.
It does in a garden suite. It does not in a regular dwelling, but it does in a garden suite. And I notice you've done waivers, so you're taking a risk on this. I just wanted you to understand that. So what you need to determine is what is the total square footage of the garden suite, including the basement, and then what is the square footage of your existing dwelling, excluding the basement. Okay, and the total square footage, as I outlined for the garden suite, needs to be less than the square footage of your principal of your primary residence. If it is not, then you have another variance. I'll leave that with you, okay, to calculate out. My other questions are, what's the existing setback of the garage for variance 1 that you're seeking?
1.32.
And you're asking for what?
The same, which we're rebuilding the garage in the same location.
So you're putting in the same location?
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you. That's all. I just need to clarify that. Variance 11 has to do with energized charging station. Just wondering why it's a hardship not to provide that.
We will provide that.
Okay, so you're willing to eliminate variance 11?
Yes.
Perfect. My last question, variance 3, which is a rear setback. Right now, you're slightly forward of the two abutting properties, I believe. If you were to go back to be in line with the other two, would that create another variance for you with regards to soft landscaping between the two dwellings?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, right now, you're asking for a variance with regards to where the garden suite's going to be located for rear yard setback.
Correct.
If you were to bring it back so that it is in line with the other two neighboring existing houses,
Mm-hmm.
would that create another variance for you in the rear yard?
No,
No, so you could do that.
I could do that.
Okay, those are my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and you've given Daniel some time to sort of reflect on it. I'm thinking, sorry. So,
Actually have a question.
Daniel, you're going to think about, especially that question about the size of the garden suite relative to the principal residence, because as Mr. Komorek pointed out, if the garden suite square footage or area is larger than the principal residence, it requires another variance, in which case we would have to seriously consider deferring consideration of this. I'm just wondering, do we pause before hearing from a great number of area residents on the merits, if in fact we're going to be deferring this?
Well, I mean, we can approve it, but if you're missing that variance, then
You're gonna have to come
the
back.
plan examiner, when you go for permit, may reject it. So that's why I think it's important for you to figure that out.
I can answer that. So what happened is we did receive a zoning review. So all the waiver is based on the zoning review. And because there was an additional variance, I thought, for the attached garage of the house, then it was added to it in form of a waiver. But all the items that are on the waiver were part initially of a zoning review from the city.
Okay, so you're comfortable with what you've requested then?
That's what I received from the city, so I should be comfortable with it, yeah.
Okay, I just
Well,
wanted to make sure, because I'm just seeing a waiver, and I
Yeah,
didn't
I
see those
understand.
calculations, and you don't, and I wanted you to be clear that you understand that the square footage of a basement for a garden suite is included in the GFA.
I've never received a variance
Okay,
through the zoning review, so I can only go by that.
fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Well, let's proceed on the basis then that we do have a complete application. And we'll start inviting people, firstly, those in the room. And the first one I have listed here is Lauren Dickey. Is Lauren Dickey here? And I also see we have a Cleona Dickey at the same address.
Yes.
What, listening in or?
They are virtual.
Yeah, my name is Lauren Dickey. I'm at 77 Oxenden Crescent. but
Sorry,
I'm being-
sorry, sir, please, could you clarify the participation of Cleona?
Is my wife?
Yeah, but she's listed here as a virtual participant.
Okay.
Is she listening? Does she want to?
She's actually just listening.
Okay, good, because we normally limit presentations to one from a single address.
Right.
All righty.
So just
That's
to
good.
stop right now, my legal counsel's online here. He'll be speaking on my behalf.
Oh, and who is that?
Connor Harris of,
We got
Representing,
them.
okay.
yeah,
So, and he's here or virtual?
virtual, Mr. Chair.
it's virtual.
Okay, so we're waiting, then we're going to hear from your agent rather than yourself. Thank you.
Correct.
Perfect. Connor Harris.
Morning, Mr.
Are you
Chair,
available,
members of the
Connor?
committee. I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So you're representing
thank you.
Lauren and Cleona Dickey, who live at 77 Oxenden Crescent?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And for the record, my name's Connor Harris with the firm Raymond Harris LLP, and my address is Suite 202, 250 The Esplanade.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. And as you noted, Mr. Chair, I am here this morning providing submission and deputation on behalf of Lauren and Cleona Dickey, the owners of the property at 77 Oxenden Crescent. 77 Oxenden Crescent is the property immediately adjacent to 571 Renforth Drive to the south. Even though it fronts onto Oxenden Crescent, it is a neighboring property to 571 Renforth. They essentially lie head to toe to one another. Our clients have lived at that address for many years. Oxenden Crescent is a quiet residential street with 14 single-family homes located along it, all of which are set back a minimum of 9 meters from the street. The minor variances proposed by 571 Renforth would facilitate construction of what it terms a garden suite fronting onto Oxenden Crescent, accessed by a parking area, effectively a new driveway along Oxenden. This would, in our submission, essentially create an entirely new home next to the Dickey property. The home would be set back less than 9 meters from the street, unlike the other homes on Oxenden Crescent, and represents, in our view, effectively a severance of the 571 Renforth property, in fact, if not in law, by creating a new home on the property accessible by a second driveway. 571 Renforth would then have 2 driveways, one in the front and one in the rear, all of which raises significant concerns on behalf of the Dickeys. Although it's termed a garden suite, in our view, the application would allow the construction of what is essentially a second home on the property. It is proposed to be, as facilitated by minor variance number 2, 130% larger than the size of a garden suite permitted by city policy. This, in our view, is much bigger than what the city has permitted in its policy governing garden suites. And it doesn't represent, in our view, an example of NIMBYism or opposition by the Dickeys to development in general. The Dickeys are concerned about overdevelopment and overcapacity of this particular lot. Those concerns are well-founded, given that the home currently on the property is rented out effectively as a rooming house and has been for the last 4 years or so to multiple individuals rather than an entire family or something of that nature as a single or low-level unit. Our clients have observed on many occasions at least 5 vehicles in the existing driveway on the property and are concerned that with the construction of a second dwelling and a second access, that situation would then be extended to and applied to the new dwelling on the property, as well as the new driveway, increasing traffic and transportation concerns on Oxenden Crescent, and potentially doubling or tripling the existing capacity of the lot. This is out of character with the existing residential neighborhood and would set a worrisome precedent that could cause substantial alteration of that existing character and rob it of the qualities that so many residents find attractive. There are a couple of specific concerns I want to highlight before wrapping up. One is that minor variance 1 seeks to reduce the setback for the location of the newly attached garage. This would locate the garage close to the utility room that is existing on Mr. and Mrs. Dickey's property. The close proximity of that garage and its reduced setback would reduce our client's privacy regarding that utility room and their property overall. And they also have concerns about the protection of a large maple tree, which is located along the lot line between 77 Oxenden Crescent and 571 Renforth Drive, and want to ensure that tree protection measures are required during construction to ensure that no harm comes to that particular tree. Closing on the 4 tests for a minor variance, being whether the variance proposed is minor, desirable for appropriate development or use of land, and maintains the general intent of the city's bylaw and official plan. In our submission, the minor variance application fails all 4 tests. As I've stated, garden suite and the scale of the development is not minor. It is not an appropriate development or use of land, and the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and official plan are not maintained, being out of character and out of line with the intent of the city's policies.
Sorry, Mr.
regarding
Harris,
garden suites
if you
and
can,
the character of the surrounding.
Mr. Harris, could you please wrap? Your time is up. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm completed.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Harris before we proceed?
I have a few, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Go ahead, Mr. Komarek.
Okay, for starters, Mr. Harris, variance 1, which is for the garage setback. Given that I believe the applicant has expressed that it's the existing setback, how is that an issue to your client?
That is what I did hear that, Mr. Committee Member, and thank you for bringing that up. If it's going to be in the existing location, then I don't know that it remains a concern. However, the issue arose from our understanding of variance was that setback was seeking to be reduced. And so
that's what I thought as well,
being
and
the
that's
case,
why I sought that clarification. So given, if in fact it is the existing situation, I'm assuming then you no longer have an opposition to that variance.
assuming the existing situation will be more or less maintained, I don't believe there'd be any basis for an opposition on that ground.
In terms of your concerns for what's being proposed, would it be fair to summarize that your main concern is with the driveway and the garage being putting placed there, and that the the garden suite does not line up with the other 2 existing houses? Would that be a fair summary of what your concerns are?
I would add to that only, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Member, that the other primary concern is just how the property will be used in terms of increasing the capacity or number of occupants.
But that's not before us. That's not for us to decide. We're here to deal with urban form and what variances relate to that.
Respectfully, Mr. Member, the 4 tests require consideration of the appropriate use of the land, which in my submission that concern was false.
You do also concede, I believe, that this is a very unique property, and in essence, there's a gap that's created by this backyard, and in the normal order of things, there would be a house there.
The lot alignment and configuration does seem to be unique as to whether there would normally be a home there on that lot next to my client's. I can't speak to that.
Okay,
obviously
maybe you can speak to this.
Configuration happens some way or the other.
Fair enough. Maybe you can speak to this then. Are you aware of the current EHON proposal where essentially all, within a matter of weeks, assuming there are no appeals, any major streets will, as of right, allow 6-story developments, which would in fact encompass this particular property because of its unique situation on Renforth Drive?
I am familiar with that EON proposal, yes.
Right. So, I mean, a potential alternate redevelopment of this site could see a 6-story fourplex on Renforth rather than a garden suite in the rear. Just wondering how your client would feel about that. But anyway, just for some perspective, I wanted to put that on the table because I believe this is a unique property and it needs a unique solution. You can comment on that if you wish. If not, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Member. My only comment would be that, my client would have to consider that proposal if it were to come forward.
That could come forward as of right.
Mm-hmm.
No, exactly. But they would have to consider that at the time, and that's not what's before you. This solution, a unique solution may be appropriate. This solution is not such an appropriate resolution.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on now. The next in-person participant I have is Mark Wolochativk. Apologies for the pronunciation.
They are present, but just to confirm, they do not want to speak. Perfect. Yes, they still do not want to speak, so that's okay.
Okay. I also have in person Robert Rosati. Mr. Rosati, please repeat your name and give us your address, please.
It's Robert Rosati, 54 Oxenden Crescent. I want to begin with it. We want this to be a win-win situation from ourselves, also from the applicant. And we want to make sure it's in the zoning bylaws, so they burned also. The frustrating thing is we don't understand what's happening. You're absolutely right. This is outside the normality of a normal home. We understand that. But 11 variances, that's a lot of variances. And I did some calculations on that. And including the basement and everything, the garden suite is 2,000 square feet. And the house is 1,800. So we just don't understand what this is. Is it a house? Is it a garden suite? Is the address on Renforth? Is the address on Oxenden? We don't know. And that's our concern.
Well, the address would be Renforth. The garden suites keep the address of the principal residence.
Even though there's a driveway in the back, a full driveway. Yeah. You see,
it's in the rear yard of 571 Renforth.
What makes sense to me, and again, I can't speak for the applicant, but okay, put a monster home there, right? With a driveway on Oxenden, that makes sense. If you're going to move in there, right, that makes sense. But I don't understand 2 properties on one lot. I don't understand that. And then basically, they're 2 separate homes. I'm not sure if
that's exactly what garden suites are, 2 separate homes, a principal residence and a secondary one.
But is a secondary residence really a secondary residence, or is it a primary residence for someone else? I don't know. I don't know the intent, nor do I pretend. I've never talked to the applicants, by the way, right? So I'm not sure what their intent is, whether they're going to move in or whatever. I don't know. But as a homeowner there for 40 years and everybody else has been there for 40 or 60 years, we want progress, we want everything, we want the world to be perfect. We understand that. But not knowing what's happening is very troublesome. We don't know what's going to happen, right? I'm an engineer and I can look at plans myself, right? But I look at the variances and I look at the square footage and I'm going, well, what is this? I'm not sure. We're confused.
Well, just as a general rule, garden suites, secondary buildings are permitted on every residential lot in the city of Toronto, provided they meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw. In this case, there are 11 instances where the zoning bylaw provisions aren't met and relief is being sought. But not all of them are for the garden suite.
Yeah, and admittedly, this is really outside the norm, right? To have a garden suite with another driveway outside, but we understand that.
This is an extraordinary, unique situation. I know it quite well. I believe the principal residence on this street was probably the first house built on Renforth.
You're absolutely right.
I used to live just up the street on Lafferty and know this situation quite well. So anyway, I'm sorry you don't understand, but we're just trying to outline the facts as we understand them.
Mm-hmm. So all these variances are acceptable then? To me, they seem major, but maybe not.
Well, we don't sort of consider 11 variances necessarily as being indicative of not minor. We
Right.
look at each and every one of the 11, and we have to be satisfied that they are all minor, representing appropriate development, satisfying the general intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw.
Right.
Those are the so-called 4 tests. And we look at them, in this case, 11 times.
Right.
It's 10 now. The applicants
It's now 10.
removed. And just as a footnote, the previous application that we just approved was reduced from 14 to 11. And we did approve 11 variances on the previous application.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that was minor and appropriate.
And I understand the variances. I understand that, an inch or 2. But then when you're looking at something, it's not an inch or 2. It's quite dramatic, in my opinion. But I don't know.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Rossetti? Yes, okay. Ms. Popovic.
Mr. Neighbor, could you please clarify your comment, if I heard it properly, that the square footage based on your calculation of the garden suite, did I hear you that it's larger than the square footage of the home?
Based on the drawings, and I can only take the outside to outside dimensions because some of the inside dimensions were not accurate, I don't believe. The total square footage of the garden suite is 2,046 square feet, including the basement and the cold cellar. The square footage of the existing home is 1,818 square feet, including the basement. So I'm just doing a comparison. To me, it seems like 2 houses. Not a garden suite, but 2 separate individual houses. If that's allowed, then it's allowed. But to me, it doesn't seem, the intent of a garden suite is a little suite in the back, right? You rent it out or whatever. This is why I make the comment of if they want to build a bigger home there, well, that probably makes sense.
if I heard you correctly, again, thank you for that clarification. When you calculated the square footage of the house, you did include the proper house, the original house, you did include the basement?
Absolutely. I wanted to compare apples and apples.
Okay.
So I included the square footage of the existing house, basement and living area, and of the garden suite, basement, upper level, and cold cellar.
Okay. And so then can you back out or remove the basement portion of the main house, as I understand it, because that is not part of the calculation that we are considering?
Well, the main portion of the house, I believe, is, of the existing house, is 909.4 square feet of the main house, not including the basement. So it seems to me that the garden suite is basically, if you're including the basement, is double that.
But what we have before us on the notice is the ancillary building, being the garden suite, is 82.72 square meters, which is 890 square feet.
Of the garden suite?
Yep.
Okay. 600, how many square feet?
It's 82.72 square meters, which converts to 890 square feet.
Of the garden suite?
That's for the garden suite. That's the variance being sought. That's what we have before us.
Oh, variance, meaning the difference between, okay. All I did was calculate based on the drawings.
Now that in fairness, Member Dalton, that 82.72 is the coverage of the suite, not the floor space index.
But they're not seeking a variance for FSI.
But that's the issue, is we think that there is potentially a problem with that.
As the applicant noted, they're saying existing house and garden suite is 29% versus the 33% permitted, which is why they didn't seek that. And he's basing his waiver on a review that was done by city staff.
Yeah.
So if city staff didn't pick it up.
And I'm just basing my calculations on the drawings. That's it. That's all I can do.
And if you're correct.
Understood. But again, if this thing gets approved and they move forward and building staff pick it up, they'll have to come back.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
This may not be the end of it.
Well, I understand.
If you're right, this is not the end of it.
Yeah.
But we have to deal with what's before us.
I understand.
And what's before us does not address floor space index.
Yeah. And I'm trying to protect the applicant also. They didn't want to go and spend $400,000 and then find out a bunch of variances later. We understand that. We just want total disclosure at this particular point in time, what they're going to intend on doing. And the gentleman said the family's going to move in. I didn't know that. How do we know that, what their intent is? And that could change tomorrow, right, obviously. And that's not your thing is to variances, yes or no. I understand that.
Yeah. And our concern is built form where we don't address occupancy.
I understand.
Tenant
I understand.
owners. Yeah. Well, thanks for being helpful to your neighbor.
Okay, thanks.
Just a quick comment. Speaking of
For
built
Mr.
form,
Rosati,
just for everyone. So speaking of built form, I do have an issue with the property not being in alignment, the garden suite not being in alignment with the houses on Oxenden. It's Oxenden, right? I do have a problem with that. I'm assuming that the chain link fence that is around the entire property will be removed, or at least certainly where the garden suite is for access. And what were transportation's comments on access for the garden suite from Oxenden?
They have 3 conditions. I'll just summarize them here.
Because I don't believe we've ever had a garden suite come before us that actually had access. I know this is an unusual situation, but I don't think we've ever had a garden suite come before us that had access on from another.
I had one yesterday in Scarborough, but that doesn't count.
Scarborough doesn't count?
Yeah, Scarborough counts. Don't get me into trouble.
Okay,
This is publicly recorded. I love Scarborough. I love Scarborough.
So it does happen. So there is a precedent. There is a precedent for this in the city.
Long Branch.
Okay. And I also do agree, and I just wanted to say this, the owner of 54 Oxenden Crescent, I agree that really This is two separate houses, and also, you know, why not just tear the small house down and build an appropriate home for this lot, and front onto Occidental. I don't get this at all, but in any event, those are my comments.
So the transportation comments have to do with installation of electric vehicle infrastructure, and there's a condition that they're requiring the applicant to speak to confirm explicitly to development planning and review that they're proposing to install electrical vehicle structures. That's a condition. Very good. Number 2, the submitted site plan shall be revised to clearly illustrate that the proposed new driveway to the garden suite shall be designed and constructed in accordance with the applicable city design standards, and the above revision confirmation shall be undertaken to the satisfaction of transportation services. So it has to be built to appropriate standards, not surprisingly. So can we move on then? We have, according to my records here, Rich Kostowiak is here. There we go. Well, Rich, if you could just repeat your name and address for the record, please.
Rich Kostoniak, 83 Oxenden Crescent.
Please proceed.
Okay, I'm about 3 doors away from the proposed site. Most of my concerns have been addressed already, but I did want to just, what committee member Alderson just mentioned, and exactly like my other fellow neighbor, ideally if this single-family farmhouse was torn down and a nice home was built, then I don't think there'd be as much opposition to it. The driveway onto Oxenden is a primary concern for all of us, just because it is a small street. It is a very tight street, only 14 homes. We do have a problem with snow clearing, garbage pickup. There are quite a few children on the street currently right now. But I think some of the mentioned changes are extremely concerning in retrospect to what we've seen happen on the property since the ownership's taken over in about 3 or 4 years ago. There has been numerous people living there, unknown to the rest of the residents on the street. People come and go, cars come and go. I think all the committee members are familiar with the house. You mentioned that you were, but this is the existing house. This is taken from your website with the sign being posted. And you can actually see, I think, a bylaw infraction with the car being parked on the front lawn. And this is just a number of things that have been happening with the property, because normally on a weekend you could see 6 or 7 or 8 vehicles slammed into this little area on the front. This is facing Renforth. This is the farmhouse. It's like a 2-bedroom house with 7 or 8 cars there overnight for a number of days. We wondered if it was a park and fly for the airport. And that's what they're doing with this. Now, if they do the same thing on the opposite side facing Oxenden with another driveway and another garage, what are we going to have? How many cars? We're going to have 14 cars during a weekend? Again, if this house was taken down, and it wasn't built in the 60s, it was probably in the 20s, it was probably the first house on Renforth. Fine lady lived there for a number of years. She passed away, and the family sold it, and these people bought it, and this is what we're dealing with. Trees have been cut down in the backyard. There's a graded catch basin that was in the southeast corner of the backyard that was filled in by the current owners about 3 or 4 years ago when they first took possession. We have a problem in 2013. We had a problem in 2013 with the excessive rain and the flooding in the area. And after that had happened, the city was very adamant with everybody disconnecting their downspouts, not extending their driveways or their patios because they wanted the water to seep into the soil. No, it comes along this design where you're taking away that backyard that would accept the water from rainfall and push it all into sewers. So that's another concern that I have as well, because we all got flooded in our street there. So again, I'm going to wrap up, but I'm going to just say that I think with a single home being built, and if they want to sell it, that's fine. None of the owners have ever lived there. It's just been transient occupants coming and going. There's been all kinds of music, loud noise, and excessive partying going on in that house. It's been a nightmare for all of us that live there, and we don't need it multiplied by 2, by a second house, because it's 2 houses on one little tiny lot. That's what's happening. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions for Rich, panel? Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
So, Adam, help me. According to my records, I have one virtual participant named Brad Hunt.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hunt, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you just repeat your name, give us your address, and then speak to us?
Yeah, name is Brad Hand. My address is 58 Oxon and Crescent, so I live just across the street, a couple doors down. Good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to make this deputation. In addition to the 11 variances that we were strongly against that have been voiced today, my family, we have 3 primary concerns that we'd like to highlight with the committee. I'll go through the 3 that I have. Safety is one. With safety in mind, we bought our house on Oxenden, which, as mentioned, is a cul-de-sac, quiet street. Allowed or not, kids play in the cul-de-sac. They play street hockey, catch, basketball, learn to ride their bikes. And with this additional garden suite and these additional changes to 571 Renforth, there's going to be increased traffic, increased parking on the street. There's multiple tenants in both the primary unit now. We assume, again, it's just assumption based on the current situation of the prior residents. There's going to be multiple unit tenants in the garden suite as well, which would lead us to believe more cars and parking along Oxenden, as parking isn't permitted along Renforth Drive, which would increase the cars on the street and pose elevated risk for myself and my family. The second concern I have is decline in property values. Based on a few factors, we're under the impression this will be a rental property or a rooming house, the garden suite. 571 Renforth is currently being rented out to multiple tenants, multiple cars parked all over the driveway and the front lawn. New design for the garden suite shows 2 things that lead me to believe that they're going to include a lot of renters within this unit. There's a design for a basement walkout, which is a sure bet that they're going to put in additional accommodation for a tenant in the basement. I'm in the construction business myself, and all our rental buildings that we build, we put in bike racks. The designs show a bike rack in the back of it. So I know that their plans aren't necessarily for family, it's for to accommodate renters. It's a transient and a rooming house in our neighborhood would obviously bring down property values, so that's our concern as well. My third concern is ignoring established bylaws. Bylaws are put in place by local authorities for good reason. They reinforce community standards and ensure orderly, systematic, standardized processes for way development and or redevelopment takes place. 571 Renforth proposal is attempting to break down those barriers on established bylaws, which open the floodgates, we feel, for other developments to further push the limits and not follow those well-established bylaws that we have in place currently. It was mentioned already that not alignment with neighboring properties, that was a concern to mine as well. And I won't necessarily mention some of the other stuff that's already been addressed, but in closing, the application does not meet all 4 tests under my assumption of S45-1 of the Planning Act. Especially the variances are required to be minor in nature. Therefore, this application should be rejected in its current form. I understand the city's mandate to increase density. However, this is not the place to do it. This is a one house, one property neighborhood. To the owners of the property, put the design around, follow local bylaws, and profit from the sale of a newly built single-family home. That is my take on the current stance of the proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Panel, any questions for Mr. Hand? Sorry. No? Okay, Daniel, it's rebuttal time for you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hold on. So you've heard a lot in the last 40 minutes.
Yes, I have. I would like to start by eliminating variance number 3 with respect to the required rear yard setback. And as I noted previously, number 11 regarding the level 2 charging.
So variances 3 and 11 are eliminated.
Yeah. If staff can please pull up the site plan on the screen, I would appreciate it.
We will bring the site plan up as soon as possible.
So just while we're working on this, Daniel, is eliminating variance 3, does that align the garden suite with the houses on the north and south?
So it's the average of the 2 adjacent lots?
It's the average.
It's the average, yes.
Mr. Chair and members, as you can see, we're having a bit of a glitching and freezing a bit, but we are slowly bringing up the site plan.
Yeah. Take your time.
Yeah, the members will have it in front of them.
Okay, no problem. So first things first, I would like to clarify the concern raised by the lawyer representing the adjacent neighbor of number 77 with respect to the location of the garden suites garage, as was stated in his letter. The location of the garage is situated beside number 73 and not beside number 77, as stated in his letter. The neighbor of number 73 has fully supported and wholeheartedly agrees with this application. He's the only one that has supported us this far. In terms to the other neighbors, I don't feel like what we're proposing here is it doesn't have any impact on the people across the street. From what I heard, none of the neighbors actually have provided with a solution to the existing scenario that we have there. The easiest thing, obviously, is to say, yeah, let's demolish the house, right? But that's not my call, or I don't know if the owners, that's what they're thinking. But if this garden suite doesn't go through, then they have other options, right? And one of the options would be, like I submitted in the supplementary material, that they could, as of right, build a fourplex, right? Either facing Ranforth or facing Oxenden Crest, right? What we're providing here is a form of solution both for the neighborhood and the family. In order for the family to feel welcomed and to feel integrated into the neighborhood, they gotta feel like they have a building that belongs to the street. Okay, if we don't have a garden suite in this case that faces the street, feels part of the neighborhood, then I think we're back to square one with a problem of the uniqueness of this lot. And yeah. Any questions? I'd like to.
Any questions for Daniel? Before we
Yeah, I
proceed?
just want to clarify, is the square footage of the garage being included in your calculation of the garden suite?
No, so the square footage of the garage is included in the area, in the coverage.
In the coverage numbers?
Coverage.
Okay, not the GFA?
Yeah, so we made sure that the maximum allowed footprint area for the garden suite is 60 square meters. I believe we have 59.88. So the additional coverage that we're seeking is
for the garage?
For the garage and the roof canopy behind it,
Okay.
yeah. We could have, sorry.
That's fine, no, and you're comfortable by moving the house back to align with the other two houses, that you're not going to be short on landscaping deficiency in the rear or any of that? I guess you'll see what happens.
Well, I make sure to comply.
Okay.
But if that's an issue that the neighbor has, we can take the average. I did speak with planning staff. Planning staff had no concerns given that it's such a sufficient driveway.
Yep.
That they had no thing.
And just to comment, I mean, we've seen a number of applications where people are adding garden suites and then the neighbors are concerned that there will be no parking provided. Whereas in this case, you're actually providing the parking, so.
Yeah, so I mean, the house should have faced the opposite way, but
Absolutely.
it's not. So now by saying we're taking parking off the street, we rather have parking parked on private property, right?
Okay, and that's the other point that I think I wanted to make at the end of your presentation in any case, is that I don't understand the opposition to there being a driveway on Oxenton, because if there were a normal house on Oxenton, it would have a driveway. So I don't understand what the difference is.
And it will fit with the character of the rest of the houses. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, I think we can now go into committee for presumably some discussion. And following that, a motion with reasons. We're now dealing with a revised application. Variances number 3 and 11 have been eliminated. And we have 3 conditions from transportation services and urban forestry conditions 1 and 2, and what we heard and read from numerous area residents.
Well, with that, I would like to make a motion to approve, as I believe this application meets the 4 tests. It is a unique site to have the dual frontage, and I think that's where the confusion, but also advantages for the owner come up, because they have the freedom to provide the parking and create the dual situation, subject to the forestry and the transportation comments.
Conditions. I'd be willing to second that. My only caution and my own concern is that I think there's a variance that's potentially missing here because of the square footage size of the garden suite, but we'll see what happens with that.
Correct.
I mean, the applicant seems to think he's confident, he's okay with it, so if he gets, or he'll get stopped at building permit process, so.
Well, he's been cautioned by us, he's been cautioned by Mr. Rosati, and as you say, we'll see what happens. He may be back here.
I mean, my principal concern was that the suite did not align with the other houses, so having withdrawn that, pulled it back, I'm okay with that. And, you know, assuming that that doesn't create another variance with the distance between, it shouldn't, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's the longest seconding I've ever done, but.
Okay, so on that basis, you're gonna second it, or?
Yes, sorry.
You're gonna second it?
Yeah.
As revised.
As revised?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
With the conditions articulated by Mr. Dalton, forestry and transportation. What's that mean? Oh, yeah, okay, let's vote. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? We have 1 opposed. So the application is approved by a vote of 4 to 1. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, all of the people that participated in this. It's a very unique situation. Obviously, difficult for many of you, but on the basis of our mandate here, being the 4 tests, we're obviously satisfied that it addresses them, and well, some of us are. So yeah, let's, how about we have a little break?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was thinking the same thing, maybe a 15-minute break or maybe even 20. What would you like to do, 11:25 or 11:30?
11:25?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll take a break till 11:25. In the meantime, during this break, I'm going to take a quick opportunity. A call-in user has recently joined with a phone number that I do not have on my list, so I'd like to do a quick mic check with them, but you guys don't need to be around for that.
Okay.
Microphone check for call-in user 647. Sorry, Mr. Chair, the call-in user has just dropped off.
An hour and a half, and we haven't done a consent yet. We got 7 consents. I have no idea. I've never had 7 consents. We've never had them. They seem to go to a way to penalize me when it's my turn. I had that 37 minutes.
That's the reason I opposed this last application. I just didn't feel, based on the number of concerns and issues, and also because of the size of the garden suite, I just didn't feel it was desirable.
Well, I think he's going to have to come back. He's either going to have to shrink this down considerably, or come back and argue why it should be bigger than the house.
Mind you, if the garden suite matches the size of the house on houses on Occidental, and actually
That was exactly what I was thinking. If it looked like a driveway shouldn't be a big deal. They all have driveways.
it could be
If it's a nice looking small home,
but then wouldn't severance of the lot be more appropriate?
well, the lots are too small though.
Too small, so it wouldn't fly.
I don't think so. Not enough area.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, that was
You
an.
know what? I was going to say to them, because I mentioned it about the chain link fence. The one good thing is the chain link fence, I think, is going.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It was always very unsightly. Yep. Oh.
Pennsylvania, rarely more actually, but. No, I have, honey, I got honey.
Kind of, but I'm not a big like Italy guy. Oh, really? Yeah. So I hope like the guys at like my club team do well. Gotcha. But there's like Italy, there's no players from Milan. Not that kind of budget. Not really, but it's like I spend like 50 out of 100. Sorry, what is it? 100 out of 104 weeks every 2 years. Not liking these guys, and then I have to like them for a month.
Oh wow! How about that? It's an interesting take. I mean, just it's more of a obviously culture thing, but I see your point. You're more because you're a club guy. You're more like I can't stand this guy.
Yeah, like
95% of the year I hate.
Yeah, even more. Like it's literally like 50 out of 52 weeks every year. I don't like these guys, and I don't like them. Yeah, I don't like them, and then now I have to like them. Like not all of them, but like some of them. Just like yeah.
To your point, there's been some players in the past that I literally just say, why are you on the team? And I hate your face. Like that's happened several times actually.
But like, bad is different because bad like you can only.
Oh, I'm talking about this like I. Luca told me I said this guy's overrated. I just don't like him. Like he just pisses me off.
I love
him. He was on Palermo. I loved it. He didn't do anything in that workplace. Scored 2 goals against the Ukraine. That was it.
That's it. That's all he needed to do. They're all like bad. I don't have like a skill. It's not a skill thing. It's like all these guys play for like Inter or Juve, especially Inter and Juve. I'm like, I can't.
I respect that position because that's like you're true to your actual real team, like more than anything.
Yeah,
I like that.
Like I'll cheer. Like I know Milan has a couple guys going from France. They have a couple guys in not England, Netherlands. France, Netherlands, and Switzerland.
Netherlands would, they could use a break. They always have such a great team. They just never seem to pull off ever.
I don't think their year is this year either.
No, I know.
Portugal, Milan is a player in Portugal.
They're another team. They always have. Like, I can't believe they won a Euro. They were Ronaldo era.
They're sick this year.
Yeah, I know.
They're sick. I think they're gonna do well. But there's one team.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them doing well, to be honest. Like, I feel like they've waited their turn enough, and now they got some Euro Cup cachet.
There's one team I don't like. Spain.
Nobody does.
I just, not for any other reason other than I don't like how they play. I think it's boring. Like, I'll never watch a Spain game before the semifinal. Like, you couldn't. Like, the tiki-taka, like, it's not for me. Everyone has their own style, plays differently.
When are we back? 11:30?
11:25.
Oh, okay, that's 3 minutes.
All right, Mr. Chair and members, folks virtually and in chambers, thank you for indulging us in that quick break. We'll just get ready to get our members' cameras on and we'll get started. Mr. Chair, we're on item number 9. Mr. Chair, before we dive into that, I brought your attention before we took the break that the agent was not present on the call for item number 14. I just hit refresh on my attendees list, and I do see them that they are now on the meeting, but they haven't authorized the use of their microphone. So I can let them know right now to make sure they authorize the use of their microphone. Frank Bellini, please log out and log back in and authorize the use of your microphone. I cannot mute or unmute you at this time, so you will not be able to speak without authorizing the use of your microphone. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll proceed then. So we're on item number 9, 75 Silverstone Drive. The agent is Kaushik Suthar. The purpose of the application is to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage and a patio in the rear yard. The revised application includes 4 variances, reduced from 6. We have no agency comments. We have 7 letters of support. Panel, are we okay to ask the agent if he's okay to go without a presentation? Sure, okay. Mr. Suthar?
I'm the Kausuthar representing the 25 Silverstone Drive on
Yeah.
behalf of the property owner.
Yeah, well, the panel, we were just discussing, we believe this application is very straightforward. And we might suggest to you that in lieu of a presentation from you, would you be okay to just answer any questions if we have any?
Yeah, I'm willing to answer the questions.
Okay. So panel, any questions? We have no questions. I don't believe we have any registered speakers, Adam, online or.
That is
Any-
correct,
anyone
Mr.
in the
Chair.
room, here to speak about 75 Silverstone Drive? No? And no one online?
Correct.
Okay. So let's go into committee for a motion then.
Okay, I'd like to move a motion for approval, as I believe the application is very straightforward and meets the 4 tests, and there are no conditions.
Okay, is there a seconder for Mr.?
I'll second that, just noting that it's as revised.
As revised,
Correct.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so a motion and a seconder has been made. All in favor? That is unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Suthar.
Thank you very much and a wonderful day.
Okay, you too. So moving on to item number 10, 438 Evans Avenue. This is a consent and variance applications for each of the 2 proposed parts. We have urban forestry condition 5, which is to refuse. And urban forestry offers some alternative conditions if we, as a committee, wish to approve this application. We have engineering and construction services and transportation services. And we have the community planning department has articulated concerns about FSI, no frontage area, and other variances. So the agent is Dan Barry. Mr. Barry, please proceed with telling us your name again and your address, and then make your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Dan Barry, 35 McDonald Street, Dallaston, and the agent on the application. So I am aware of the comments you stated, and I think the proposed intention here is pretty straightforward: sever a lot and build 2 homes. And I'm aware of the planning concerns with regards to some of the variances. So I'd like to propose some changes to our variances this morning, and then committee could decide if they wanted to continue forward with a decision.
Okay, could you please start with, we'll do one part at a time because the variances aren't identical.
And I'll start with application A0124, which is part 1. So variances 1 and 2 pertain to the lot. And of course, I can't really make any changes there. The lot is the lot. So I'm moving on to variance 3, which is the gross floor area. The current proposal is 310.5 meters squared. That is going to be reduced to 239.28. And the proposed percentage of 0.8 would be revised to 0.6. For number 4 variance, which is the building length, this variance will be deleted. Number 5, pertaining to the side main wall's height, the variance requested was 7.69 meters. That will be revised to 7.09. For item number 6, height to the midpoint of the roof, the requested variance 8.52 will be revised to 7.92. And that's all the changes for part 1. Application A0125, which is part 2. Straight to variance number 3 again, which is the gross floor area. The new area will be 239.28 meters squared, with a percentage then of 0.6. Item number 4, building length, will be deleted. Item number 5, sidewall height, the revised number will be 7.07. And lastly, item number 6, roof midpoint height. Our new number will be 7.87 meters. And that's all the revisions for part 2.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you know, we do state at the outset we don't entertain revisions on the fly.
I know.
Do you have revised plans?
I don't have revised plans for today.
Well, panel, what's our view here, our wish?
Is there anyone from the community that's wanting to speak or express?
I don't believe so, no.
Mr. Chair and members, there are no one on my list, and I don't think there's anybody else.
Is there anyone in the room that came to speak about 438 Evans Avenue? No? So no one here, no one online? Yeah. And planning still, I mean, the significant concerns from planning are the frontage and area. Yeah, frontage and area.
So do you know, or are you aware, you're reducing the building length? Does that help with the trees at all?
It won't.
Oh, okay. Just wondering.
No, I was being honest.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be nice to see revised drawings. I know they're all less than what the notice went out as, but I'd still like to know what we're approving. So on that basis, I'd like to move a motion for deferral. Just so.
And I understand that
Yeah.
as well, and I'm not opposed to that.
Just,
And
just
that
there
may
were,
help with
just there were
forest,
too
or-
many revisions for me, I think personally, like, as soon as you started getting into the list, I thought, oh, this is gonna be.
Yeah, we're used to one, maybe
A
two,
little
but not
onerous.
8.
So I'm gonna second that motion for deferral, and I'm sorry.
But for what it's worth, it made the application much more palatable.
Of course it did. Of course.
I would agree as well.
But you're
It'd just be
still
nice
going
to
to
see
need to
it.
take advantage of your time period here to discuss with community planning, because they are narrow lots. I mean, I'm just looking at the location map, and without hearing your presentation, I don't see anything in the immediate context that's, well, I guess there's one there, but 4 doors down to the east.
I think to the east or to the
Most
west.
most of the lots
but-
around here are quite a bit bigger than that one if it's split. So anyway,
It is on a major thoroughfare though, and it's across from commercial buildings.
But it's
so.
opposite the.
well, why don't we, sir, if you're
Mhm.
agreeable, we've got a motion and it's been seconded to defer, so we'll proceed on that basis then, if it's the wish of everyone. All in favor?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Poffenbeck?
Sorry, I just want to have a comment.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Agent. I agree with the comments made so far, and I'm having trouble cross-referencing all of the changes. Would you or your client be prepared to consider further discussions with planning and forestry, given these revisions?
Absolutely.
And engage in that process, and then come back to us?
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Looks like a
fair?
natural-
Yes, absolutely.
Observation? Thank
Just
you.
the comment
Next.
I want to make is coming back to where we're at with EHON and the fact that
Okay.
this is one of the declared avenues. So planning, by the time that goes through, shouldn't even have a concern about the width of your lot. But that's just my opinion.
But you could also decide to build something different as well.
Maybe.
Anyway, yeah, I do apologize.
So, Ms. Poffenbeck, could you put your hand up on that vote?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, that's a unanimous decision to defer, and we'll see you at some point with something better or different.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, before we jump into item number 11, 283 Delta Street, I want to bring to your attention that, at least for you, Mr. Chair, your list of people speaking is not correct. We've accidentally left off item number 13, as you'll see. Item number 12, and then it skips to 14. So the reason why I bring it up now is because that item is actually 287 Delta Street. It's very similar to 283 Delta Street in that it's actually by the same owner, Nick Bassiano. So if you want, we can still stick to doing number 11, then 12, then the missing 13 on your list, and then 14. Or we could do Nick and his 2 files. You'll see your participant list lists item number 11, right? And then item number 12, and then it misses number 13 there and goes to 14. Perfect. To the best of my knowledge, there are no area residents virtually or present to speak for or against 283 Delta, but I'm confirming that with my coworkers.
Okay, so now we're dealing with application number 11, 283 Delta Street. It is a consent and 2 variance applications related to each of the proposed parts. We have engineering, construction services, and transportation services conditions. We have heritage planning conditions, 4 of them. We have 2 support letters. And we have urban forestry condition 3, and we have a planning report recommending refusal. So, Mr. Bassiano,
Yes, sir.
please repeat your name, give us your address, and then make your presentation, please.
My name is Nick Bassiano, 63 Coles Avenue, Woodbridge, Ontario.
Okay, so tell us why we should consider this proposal favorably.
Our proposal is for a pair of semi-detaches, so sever the lot into 2 and build a pair of semis. I did the similar project next door at 281, identical project, similar, exact same lot, exact same variances to the T. So I submitted street pictures showing the pictures of the existing project that I built.
When did you do 281?
2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it went through committee.
Okay.
I also did 302 Delta, that's 302 A and B Delta. It got past that committee, I went through the severance, I just haven't built it yet. And the next one is right beside at 287 Delta, which we heard today also.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There I'm gonna do a pair of detaches, it's a little bit larger lot. But in terms of the streetscape on the east side of Delta, north of my 287 is a pair of semis that were built kind of in the 70s. Actually, there's 4 semis north of me at 287 Delta, and then on south of me at, let's see here, 273 Delta and 273A Delta, similar semis. Yeah, there's the picture right there. That's the one that I built right there.
Okay.
And I've got 3 more letters of support that just didn't go in time. I consulted all the neighbors. They know me all there. And they're the actual ones that approached those owners to sell me the properties. They said, we'd rather have, to say, the devil you know than the devil you don't. We know what you build. We know the quality. So they pushed the owners for me to buy the properties.
Okay.
To keep in, they know what they're getting. And I spoke to all of them. I spoke to the neighbors across the street living in small bungalows and also neighbors living in the semis, all with support letters.
So they like you.
They kind of do,
On
yeah.
Delta.
I'm not out looking for more property. It comes to me. So I'm pretty busy on that street. I've got another one at 275 that's approached me to sell her property. I guess they're happy with the look. I mean, in terms of the build, I keep the height down. I don't ask for height requests. The variances they're standard variances. It's a pretty standard house. It's not overshadowing the neighbors, in other words, so they're happy with it.
Just with your expertise, what
Yeah.
is the typical lot size for a semi-detached that works for you?
For works for me,
Mhm.
I could work on a 45-foot, 22 and a halves. I've done a 44 at 37 Gort. That was a little tight.
So what about a 55 by 120? No problem?
55 by 120, no problem.
Okay.
I wouldn't do semis there, though. I'd do detaches on a 55.
Okay.
Yeah, just more maximizing the lot. That's why on 287 Delta, the house with the white top up there, it's 50 feet, so I'm going to put 2 detaches there just to break it up a little bit.
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
Mr.
Nick,
Chair.
do you have any comments on urban forestry? They're requesting that your application be refused.
Urban forestry on this one here, 283?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me pull that out. Not on 283, I don't think so. I think it was 287, they're asking for something.
Wait a sec, my colleagues are telling me I'm wrong, and I'm going to double check because I haven't been wrong for a long time.
Not since 1960.
I think engineering and
Number
forestry are
10.
good on this one.
As you can see, we're having too much fun today.
Do you have copies of the earlier decisions? Because we don't have them on file.
Earlier decisions for 281?
281 that you mentioned?
No, I don't have them with me, no. But the variances are identical to these.
Number 10, 3 and 5.
Mr. Chair, we're on item number 11.
Oh. I withdraw the question. Okay, so no speakers. Any more questions for Nick?
Mr. Agent, irrespective of the forestry side of things, can you speak to the concerns of planning, the planning report, which has 4 denials, 4 minor variance denials, and no conditions? Excuse me, I'm wrong. There are conditions instead. Can you speak to their concerns and what your client?
I've had detailed conversations with the planner on this one, and he has no concerns with the minor variances whatsoever. His only concern is the consent. And I said, well, there's multiple consents on the street. So in terms of some of his comments,
He says prevailing size and configuration of lots. Right next door is the exact same development. So in terms of prevailing size and configuration, it's identical to next door. It's not like we're asking for anything more or less. In terms of the heights, the massing, the scale, you can see the property is not that high off the ground. We're not asking for a height request. I don't think it's excessive massing. And the scale is similar to what is there right directly next door and up the street and down the street. They're all semi-detached, the same kind of height. And even the rear and side yard setbacks and landscaped open area, it's pretty generous. And we're building exactly what's next door.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to go into in camera for a decision on the consent and the 2 variance application? We can deal with one motion. Four heritage planning conditions, urban forestry condition 3, and engineering and construction services and transportation services conditions.
And Mr. Chair and members, we do have those last-minute transportation comments. If you'd like to see those, we can put those up on the board now.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
We'll do the transportation first, and then we'll do the.
Okay.
We'll do the decision.
Sorry, so they're no longer requesting a deferral because they, yeah. They're not, okay.
You'll see the email that's on the screen now from yesterday. They had a condition to illustrate on site. Adam, do you want to go through it? Because you orchestrated it.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. So I had correspondence with both engineering construction services, which is the email you see on your screen, as well as transportation services. Engineering construction services requested that their advisory comments be included as conditions, and transportation services is no longer requesting a deferral of the application. They have no conditions. Initially, they had requested a deferral for revisions to the site plan, which were made by the applicant, but they were missed on their end. So after reviewing the revised site plan that was submitted and filed in February, they no longer have any, or they're no longer requesting deferral and have no conditions of approval. So just those conditions on your screen from ECS.
Okay, so it's just engineering and construction services conditions. And urban forestry, and not transportation services. And the 4 heritage planning conditions, which I mentioned before. Okay, so discussion, motion.
I've let.
Oh yeah, the previous.
I've let our presenter know that we do want to have those decisions up, but they obviously are working hard to get them up. But it would require downloading the content themselves. So we'll see if we can get those up for you guys.
When did this one get approved again there? 2 years ago?
No, I'd say 3 years ago. It took me a year to build it, and the owners have been living in there for about 2 years.
Were any of us on the panel? What would have been us?
No, not back then.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's why. I didn't start until September 19th.
That was pre-COVID. That's why it took a while to build it.
You ran into COVID.
There we go.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Mr. Chair, we'll get to zoom in here to make it a little more legible.
Does this impact anyone's consideration on what's before us right now? It does? So we should take some time and look at it. No?
No, I find looking at 281 and 283 is beneficial. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that. Oh.
Oh, yeah, really, eh? So are we ready or not, or what? We're ready? So motion for item 11 for the consent and the 2 variances with the conditions that I mentioned.
Okay. I will make a motion. After reviewing the information on the neighboring property at 281 Delta, I do find that those 2 parcels to be very similar to 283. And I think that does in part address planning's comments with regards to frontages, because looking at 281, they got 6.85, whereas you're currently looking for 686. So it's 0.01 off, is my point. So with that,
So what?
So with that, I'd like to move a motion for approval because I believe the application meets the 4 tests, subject to the ECS advisory comments that we're now including, as well as the heritage and forestry conditions.
And urban forestry 3?
Yep.
And engineering construction would not be advisory, they would be their conditions.
Well,
right.
Adam mentioned that they were advisory, but they want them in now as conditions. Okay, there you go, and now they're being carried over, so. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so is our motion sufficient for staff?
And that email was what,
Perfect.
from yesterday? Yeah.
Is there a seconder for Mr. Dalton's motion? Okay. All in favor? Okay, we have 4 affirmative, 1 negative, so your application's been approved.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 12, 239 Aldercrest Road. Consent application to sever the property into 2 undersized residential lots. And then there are 2 minor variance applications related to each of the proposed parts. We have presentation, which came in with the supplementary information. We have 4 support letters. Heritage planning conditions, 4 of them. Engineering, construction services, and transportation services conditions. Urban forestry condition 3. And recommendation to refuse from planning, and they make the comment that the variances proposed today are worse than what the committee refused in November 2022. And we have Mr. Palumbo as agent. Mr. Palumbo, if you just repeat your name and give us your address and then make your presentation.
Mr. Chair, just quickly, I do want to bring to your attention there are 2 residents that are interested in speaking, one in chambers and one virtually.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Kyle is here in person?
Correct.
Hi, Kyle. Okay, we'll get to you. Yep. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Committee of Adjustment staff. My name is Andrew Palumbo of Ian Hall Planning Limited at 38 Betty Nagle Street, Toronto, Ontario. I'm speaking on behalf of 239 Aldercrest. I think before getting into my formal presentation that I've provided the committee in advance of this hearing, I think I just need to make some administrative clarifications because there were revised materials that were submitted by the deadline last week, and in part to respond to the comments that received from city planning staff. And also through the review of 310 specifically nearby decisions within 500 meters of the subject site, just to get a good sense of what's been approved in this neighborhood. So I'll start by noting that the main wall height variance has reduced by 0.26 meters, so it's gone from 8.34 to 8.08. As well as again, one thing we also noticed, which is a bit of a point of clarification on the zoning notice that was issued. And again, you look through 310 decisions within this area, and along with the site-specific bylaw that applies to this site, the height was originally identified to the top of the structure, the top of roof, but it should be, like you look at all the rest of the decisions, it's taken from the midpoint of the roof. So that's why, just to be clear, and just to be of what's before the committee today, the architect on file, who was the agent, submitted a waiver with a redlined public notice to go along with it. So technically, right now, as it is, this application is technically on a waiver, and it would be clarifying that it would be an 8.99 proposed height when measured to the midpoint of the roof. So again, this is just something that we realize going through. You look at the notice, the way it's worded, and you look at the actual regulations that apply to the subject site. It's one of those. That's why, again, going in on a waiver. So even going forward, it can, if something does come up upon an approval of the subject site, it could be addressed accordingly. But it's at the risk of the architect who's submitted the waiver. And one thing I also clarify is that the only reason we aren't requesting a deferral today before the committee is because planning is still generally opposed to the principle of the consent, so they would remain opposed. And we've only addressed one of their concerns with the variances with respect to height, which I just explained before the committee. There still would be opposed to the building length variance. So only on that basis, we're not up here requesting a deferral today. It's rather just trying to proceed based on the revised plans and materials that have been presented. And that's, if it's okay now, I'd like to proceed into my presentation, unless there's any questions.
Just to clarify.
Yes.
So the revised agenda pages that we're looking at for parts 1 and 2 are accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I've provided a presentation in advance, if I can get it up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And firstly, I would just like to acknowledge again that while it's been understood that there was a previous refusal for the proposed development on the subject site, the current proposal before the committee has actually been scaled down. It also now includes a garden suite at the rear, which again, this is just in response to the Bill 23 legislation, in a very minor format, I understand that, but a matter of trying to achieve that gentle density already in the built-up neighborhoods of the city. And hence why the proposal is before the committee today. Now, I've designed a presentation. Next slide, please. The presentation is essentially focused on the variances that are being requested for approval before this committee. So the first one is, in fact, minimum lot frontage. So I provided a map that shows nearby comparables, all within 450 meters of the subject site. Next slide, please. So there are 6 examples that I came across, again, upon reviewing 310 of these decisions. This is just to give us a visual sense as to what a 6.86, which is what's being requested at the subject site, what that is perceived and how it looks from the streetscape. So the first one here is 63 to 65 Luness Road. This is approximately 360 meters west of the subject site. Has the exact same, this was approved at 6.86, which is the same as what's being requested today before this committee. 175 Aldercrest on the right. This is approximately 450 meters south of the subject site. And it's been approved at less of a frontage, but again, it's all about perception from the streetscape when you look at it, how it's viewed from the street. Very similar look and feel. Next slide, please. 272 and 274 Beta, these are located approximately 240 meters northeast of the subject site. They're both beside each other, and you can tell, but if you look at the photos, that gives the context as to what 274 looks like beside 272. 272 was approved at a height of 8.82 meters. 274 was the tallest approval I came across in my research at 10.14 meters, measured to the midpoint of the roof, again, as per the approval decision. Next slide, please. Funny enough, you actually just heard about this example, 281 Delta Street, just approximately 380 meters northeast of the subject site. I know Mr. Dalton already took a look at the precedent approval, but this was approved at a height of 8.07 meters, 0.73 FSI, and 1.07 meter setbacks. And just to give a context as to what a semi looks like beside a bungalow, if you look at the left side of the photo for the dwelling on the left. And 422 Valermo Drive, approved at 6.4 meters. This is just 150 meters southeast of the subject site. This is, I believe this is the smallest nearby approval that I've seen in terms of an approved lot frontage. Next slide, please. So just on this basis, there are clear examples of approved severances at 6.86 meters or less in the broader context of this neighborhood, including the previous approval just before us on the agenda today. The approved severances do, in my opinion, respect and reinforce the existing physical character of this neighborhood as required by the official plan. And there would be a similar perception from the streetscape of the subject site as these other examples, and especially given the range and mix of dwellings that are actually present on Aldercrest Road. I'll get a little more into that when I speak about height. But this street itself, if you look at it in terms of character, very mixed bag of different dwellings. You have bungalows, two-story semis, a walk-up apartment at 232 Aldercrest, and the three-story single detached dwellings that are, or three levels observed from the streetscape, as I will get into again as I discuss height. One of the quick point of clarification I'd like to make on terms of 6.86 meters, I think it's important to remember when you're looking at a semi, you don't have to consider the internal shared setback. So like that will result in a narrow but appropriate frontage as seen through the examples provided. All that's required is an external setback. So if you look at all the single detached that have been approved in this neighborhood, that obviously includes two separate setbacks for the internal and external, and that's not needed for a semi. So just the one setback on the one side. Another key point is that there is no variance triggered from a minimum lot area standpoint, which is consistent with the official plan policy regarding prevailing lot size. It also validates that there is sufficient area for the proposed semi-detached dwellings, as well as zoning compliant garden suites at the rear of the site, which I'll also get into. Next slide, please. The increase in FSI to 0.68, it's well within the observed approvals, but in terms of the focusing on the existing context, FSI increases have been granted for properties in just 70 to 80 meters south for the properties listed there, 226 to 234 Aldercrest. And if you see the numbers in the range, all of these dwellings are located on the west side of Aldercrest, granted just south of the subject site. But they've all been approved at an FSI being sought for the subject site, but a very similar falls right within that range. Which explains why it's perceived as such from the streetscape. And the proposed GFA FSI increase, as I've said many times before this committee, it's always a bit of a cause and effect relationship when you look at it, what other built form variances are triggered. In this case, there's a 30 centimeter setback reduction required for the side yard and a 1.85 meter increase in the maximum building length. And I'll quickly go on to discuss those as I get into the other variances. Next slide, please. Variance number 3. A reduction from 1.2 to 1.5. In my opinion, it is not perceptible from the street. It's very much in line with the existing setbacks that are actually on the subject site today. And again, in my view, the 1.2 meter setback, it'll still provide sufficient space for building separation between dwellings to avoid a bit of crowding and also provide sufficient maintenance access to the backyard. That's the general intent of this regulation. In the immediate context, on Aldercrest, again, just south at 228 and 230, the single detached three-story dwellings that are observed from the street, these had setback reductions approved to 0.61, and this is a clearly approved and visible setback from the street. as you'll see in the subsequent photos that I'll go through when I discuss heights. So they're, in my opinion, keeping with the pattern of prevailing setbacks as required by the official plan as well. Next slide, please.
Andrew, I just noticed you're running way over time here. Like, am I reading that clock right? He's 3.5 minutes in.
I would have loved. Oh, sorry, I was not aware. I apologize.
No. So the red number means overtime. So how much more do you need?
I'll quickly wrap up in a minute.
Please.
Okay. Just looking at the examples of building heights, this is the existing character. Next slide, please. But again, I've discussed these already. That's what it would look like. These are in the broader context, these next three dwellings. Just goes to show that the character of this neighborhood is characterized by dwellings that have a taller structure to them. This is nothing out of character of what's being proposed, especially in consideration of the revisions that have been made. If you could flip to variance number 7, just quickly. With respect to building length, basically, it doesn't trigger other built form variances such as building depth increase, rear yard setback reduction, lot coverage, or landscape open space reduction, which suggests that it's an appropriate footprint. And despite the proposed increase, again, there's still sufficient room for a fully compliant garden suite to be present on the site. And lastly, in terms of the rear deck, although over in size, it doesn't get any closer to its doesn't project any closer to any residence on adjacent sides. And it also, a new part of the revision I've circled on the diagram now includes a privacy screen to ensure privacy.
That the matter as refused in 2022, now that the matter as refused in 2022 now results in worse than the variance. Can you address that?
Well, I will address that, yes, very quickly. Just because I have the numbers before me. So the FSI increase back when it was refused a year ago was at 0.78. It's now been reduced to 0.73. Has been reduced to 0.68. The heights, as mentioned right at the outset, have also reduced. So when measured to the midpoint of the roof, it is now a smaller structure, and the intent was to address that specific provision again through a waiver, because for whatever reason this zoning notice said that it was measured to the top of the roof, and we look at all the other decisions, it's taken to the midpoint. Let's see, building length decreased from 20.63 to the 18.85 meters. That's before the committee today, and I will clarify, yes, but in my view, it's a minor change. The side yard setback, it did get bigger by 15 centimeters, but in the context that the GFA still reduced along with the building length. So it is a 15 centimeter difference, larger today, but again, it still reflects close to existing setbacks that are on the property today. So I think that that's an appropriate request before the committee on that basis.
Thank you for that information. Mr. DST, I believe that the planning report predates the revisions that we've had.
It does.
It does.
It does.
Would planning have a second chance to look at it? Mr. Agent, have you had that follow-up conversation?
I have not. That's why I clarified at the beginning that I still believe it. I would just, without speaking to planning, I still believe they would remain opposed because they're opposed to the consent, the principle of the consent. They believe that a 6.86 meter frontage is inappropriate. I disagree for the reasons that I've stated today.
Thank you. That's a fair comment.
Thank you, Ms. Poplar.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll proceed to firstly Kyle Kurbovojic, who I believe is in the room. Hi, Kyle. If you just repeat your name and give us your address and then make your presentation.
Yes. Oh, loud. Thank you for hearing me, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kyle Kurbovojic. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the owner of 237 Aldercrest. This is the property directly south of the proposed build. I'm here to express my strong opposition to the requested variances. I was here last time as well, in November, I believe, of last year, mainly on the grounds that the nature of these variances are not minor in nature. The proposed lot frontage reduction from 9 meters to 6.86, which I believe he mentioned has been further tweaked, and the gross floor area being increased are significant deviations from the zoning bylaws. These these proposed changes would be the first frontage reductions northwards moving. And even though he is bringing the building height, which is my next point, into remediation, this will still be the longest, widest, tallest house on the entire road of Aldercrest, which is the namesake road of Alderwood. So I think it does significantly deviate from the streetscape, as it were. Also, there's a building, or rather a house, which might become a building just north of this property. I've spoken to the developer. He is, and I quote, just waiting to see what happens. So I'm concerned about precedent here. Also, some of the provisions that I'm against are the raising of a balcony to a height that is greater than the bylaw and also greater than my privacy fence. I have a pool, looking to start a family. This is my family house. So I'm worried that the main communal area for this property will be directly overlooking my pool. It is approximately 4 feet higher than my fence, or it will be. The other concern that I have is I've spoken to a number of neighbors on the street, and they're not here today, but they are concerned. I heard something about 4 letters of approval, but I was not able to get any approval, even verbally, from them. Everybody seems to be somewhat concerned. And finally, the garden suite raises concerns as it is likely intended to be a rental unit, which generally I'm fine. I'm not opposed to this sort of thing. People need houses, but I'm worried about liability or people pool hopping or trying to get into the pool when I'm not there, liabilities and stuff. It'll require me to take out additional insurances and so on. So those are my main concerns and considerations. Going through the 4 points, I do not believe that these are minor variances. I do not necessarily agree that they are in congruence with the state of the current neighborhood. I mean, even in the first slide, you see this behemoth of a house is going to be lumbering over everything that is in its purview, even though there are some houses that meet the 7.5 meter requirement. I think that is all the concerns that I have. Some of them are, again, for the community. Some are for me, just being a citizen. And I thank you for listening and evaluating today.
Yeah, panel, just before we go, any questions for Kyle? I've got one. Kyle, what's the name of the major, or the street, the east-west street, south of you?
Lanner. So this position of, Valermo is south and Lanner is north, and Aldercrest is in the middle running north-south.
Okay. I just, and you know this because you live there, but there's a lot of severances south of you.
Yes.
And then nothing north.
Nothing northern, yeah. In fact, none of the lot frontages come out further northwards as well. Some of the properties that were indicated that are close to the height or close to those frontages are actually on other streets, but yes, within the area.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we have a virtual participant.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Muhammad Ali.
Correct.
No comments.
Mr. Ali.
Sorry, Mr.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Can you just give us your name and address, please, before you speak? Well, no, you got to speak to do that.
Mr. Chair, they went and unmuted themselves. Mohammed, I'm going to unmute you now. I did hear your comment about no comments, so just if you could just reiterate that for everybody a little more slow. All right, Mohammed, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I thought I unmuted. Yeah, no comment. Thank you. Just wanted to hear it. I didn't know it's also on live. That's why.
May I add one thing?
Thank you.
Or no?
So, Mr. Chair, yeah, Mr. Ali was just wanted to listen and has no other additional comments to make.
Okay, fine. Yeah, sure.
Yes, I have 9 o'clock. I just will add something very, very briefly. One thing I forgot to mention is the backyards are quite large for the property. We are actually the only 4 or 5 yards in this entire strip that maintain that level of greenery. There is a basin, a water basin that goes in there. When I was putting in the pool, we had to make concessions on what was going to be considered allowable to make sure that there was enough runoff location. Putting the garden houses there may modify that in some way. I don't know. I'm not an environmentalist, so like an expert, so I don't know what that.
Well, those issues are addressed at the building permit stage.
Okay.
But I think you've been here long enough, or maybe you've read that garden suites are permitted as of right throughout the city, as long as they meet the zoning standards, and these ones do. So from a planning perspective, they're okay. From an engineering and a construction perspective, that'll be addressed in another process at another time. Okay, so Mr. Palumbo, your rebuttal.
All right, I want to thank the deputy for his comments. I want to try and get everything one. I want to make sure I cover everything of the concerns that he's raised effectively. You already touched on one yourself, Mr. Chairman. This is a fully zoning compliant garden suite. Again, these are being encouraged throughout the city. It's all about the provincial and municipal demand for more housing. This is a key difference between the original proposal that was refused and the one before you today. I'll connect that to the building length. Again, while this may be a longer building in the stretch of Aldercrest, it is one of those situations where if you look at it in the context of the lot that it's on, like I said, there's still sufficient backyard space. There isn't a requirement to reduce landscape open space. There isn't an increase in lot coverage. That suggests that there is sufficient space. Generally, it suggests that there's sufficient space for drainage and such, and ample space for recreation in the backyard as well. And again, it also could coexist with a compliant garden suite. This is, again, typically building length is a back of house variance. You don't really perceive building length from the street, but understanding that obviously no matter what, it still projects into the yards. And then for that reason alone, in terms of privacy mitigation for what the neighbor has raised, this is why the revised plans that were submitted before the deadline include now, and I have it on my slide there, there are privacy screens proposed on all sides. So that's the best effort to do to, and like I said, either deck doesn't get any closer to the side yards. It stays within the building, like the footprint of the building. It doesn't go beyond. So that's a means to try and mitigate visual overlook into the neighboring yards. Mm-hmm. One thing I'll also point out on the elevations, the architect designed these semis so that in the corners of the houses, there are no windows. So there's no, if you're looking, there's no direct look into the side yards from the deepest part of the dwellings. That's a way to try and mitigate overlook rather than, because rear windows on the rear facade, that's common for all houses. But in terms of on the side of the house, those are not present on that part of the dwelling. So again, just in an effort to mitigate what would perceive to be an overlook issue. With respect to the height being the tallest, again, because of how height is measured based on the applicable site-specific bylaw, it's actually not, it will not be the tallest. And again, one thing that it can't be ignored is that this is a part of the physical character of Aldercrest is building heights similar to what is just down the street. And this proposal is basically meant to, again, complement and reinforce that, while again, not being taller than what was approved. There were heights of 9.09 and 9.19 meters respectively for 228 and 230. That's measured to the midpoint of the roof. So again, just in terms of what you're talking about character, and when you're at the street level, it would have a similar look and feel when you're actually on the street as to these existing houses that are present on the street. Again, the lot frontage is something I tried to explain is that the lot size is what it is, the actual width. But a frontage of 6.86 meters for semis, in my view, is appropriate for the reasons that it basically provides a dwelling very similar to, and I'm just trying to get you to get, if I could indulge the committee for a second. Throughout this neighborhood, there have been several approvals for reductions in setbacks from 12-meter requirements to 7.6 or so. I noted that in my justification letter. That reduction of just about 4.5 meters, it's reflective of the type of reduction that's considered appropriate. I guess I know that, like I said, 7.6 meters is for singles. I understand that. But when you apply the concept of having to require setbacks on either of those singles, you think of the concept of a sin, you basically merge those together. You eliminate one requirement for a setback. You're at a similar situation with respect to semis that exist in the neighborhood versus the single detached dwellings that have already been approved and are widespread throughout this neighborhood on a very widespread basis. And I think that addresses all of the concerns that the neighbor raised. Like I said, I'm hopeful that the privacy screen goes a long way because having a pool in the backyard, you obviously want your privacy. So hopefully the privacy screen serves to at least address that concern. And that is on the plan. So that's nothing that's not being added. It was part of the revised plans that were submitted to committee.
Okay, thanks. Before you sit down, any questions for Mr. Palumbo? Okay, thank you, Mr. Palumbo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we have the application for consent. We have revised applications for the two related minor variances.
I do have a question. Sorry, if I can just get him to come back. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand, like I'm looking at your application versus the one that was rejected previously. And with respect to side yard setbacks, your side yard setback now is less than what it was proposed then, but then it seemed to be that the requirement was more. Can you explain that?
I thought it was a 1 point, if I recall correctly, it was a 1.35 meter setback that was being requested.
Right,
as part
and
of,
1.5 was required.
At 1.5 is still required, and 1.2 is being requested.
Okay, so you are
Yeah, and just to quickly clarify, I believe that 15 centimeter difference, when you look at it in conjunction with the other variances being requested, I don't believe it has negative adverse impacts. I believe it's a minor enough variance that it's not perceptible, and it's reflective of existing prevailing streetscape setback patterns that are observed.
Okay, now fair enough. I mean, the GFA is a bigger issue for me, but yeah. Okay, so you are increasing that slightly. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so we go into committee for discussion and decision.
Okay, there's heritage conditions on this one as well, right?
Yeah. 4 heritage conditions: engineering, construction services, and transportation, and urban forestry 3.
Trying to get a sense of the neighborhood. I mean, there's just immediately to the south, there's quite a few. Looks like it were previously severed.
Yeah, on both sides.
On both sides. Those are not semis, they're actually single detached. Also, it's that style of single detached that might as well be a semi because they're so close together anyway. Which, I mean, in that regard, I prefer semis over that.
Yep.
But I'm trying to get a sense of. Yeah, almost. But I'm trying to get a sense, like for that neighborhood, it's like you said earlier, Mr. Chair. Most of these seem to be to the south. There's nothing to the north.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, I would have liked to have seen the side yard setbacks to not be a variance, but other than that, I don't have a huge concern with it. No.
You would have been perfectly
I
happy
thought you
if
were.
didn't require a side yard variance. He's partially mitigated that by proposing semis as opposed to detached.
So, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to make a motion for refusal. On this one, I'm agreeing with planning. Given the reasons that were provided in 2022, as well as the reasoning here, I don't think it meets the 4 tests, and on that basis, I move a motion to refuse.
Is there a seconder for Mr. Dalton's motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Popovic, all in favor? The application's refused unanimously.
To me, it's close, but not quite.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. These are all difficult. Okay, so we have two more items before the morning session officially ends. Shall we agree to just proceed through and keep things clean? It may be 1 o'clock or so before we're finished. You want a break now? Well, we could have a short break, come back and do the last two, and then have a lunch break. Is that okay? How many minutes do you want? 15? Okay.
Okay, so maybe, Mr. Chair, we'll return at 12:45 then.
Okay. 12:45.
Thank you. Everyone that's on the line, we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll return for the 9:30 a.m. session. Thank you.
That's interesting. A unanimous refusal. That's rare.
All right, folks. We did say we were going to break till 12:45, but committee members are ready to go. So with that being said, I do see that the two folks for item 14 are present, and we have for item 13 is present in chamber. So if Mr. Chair, you'd like to get cracking, we can start if you'd like. For 13, no. For 14, yes. That is correct, Mr. Chair. And let me try and make sure we've got communication with our presenter, because they may not be at their spot right now. No, Mr. Chair, check in with one of my coworkers to make the presenter that's presenting today for us. They're doing it remote, and I'm just making sure that they're back as well, because they were under the impression we were going to be breaking until 12:45. So. No, Mr. Chair, that is Nicole Milrose, City of Toronto C of A staffer. I'm trying to confirm with them that they're present because they are the presenter who is doing our presenting stuff for us today. They're doing the digital stuff. Yeah. Not just yet, or I've reached out to my coworker, my colleague, if you would, and I'm trying to get communication with them. All right, Mr. Chair, I think we've got contact with our presenter. So if folks would like to turn their cameras on, we can get ready to get started. For folks joining in the meeting right now, I want to bring to your attention that we are still doing the 9:30 a.m. session right now. And as such, the 1 p.m. session will start a bit later than usual. We will confirm what time the 1 p.m. session will start once we conclude the 9:30 a.m. session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Proceeding with item number 13287 Delta Street. This is a application for consent to sever the property into two undersized residential lots. And we have minor variance applications for each of the proposed parts. We have Urban Forestry requesting deferral, and in the alternative conditions 1, 2, and 3. We have engineering and construction services and transportation services conditions, heritage planning conditions, 4 of them, and 2 letters of support. And we have as agent Nick Basciano. Mr. Basciano.
On now? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there's a desire for a full presentation.
Okay. My name is Nick Basciano, and I live at 63 Coles Avenue, Woodbridge. My proposal is to sever the property and construct 2 detached homes with minor variances. Now, there was a concern from forestry. I spoke to Dorothy there yesterday. I did actually issue a revised site plan to address their concern for the city tree. I relocated the driveway to the north of the property for part 1 to keep it away from the tree, 3.6 meters. It's a 55.
Does that affect your variances?
No, it doesn't affect the variance. Yeah. I sent it in late. I have a copy of it. It is revised. They have a copy of it also. What I did is just move the driveway north and maintain the 3.6 meter requirement for the urban forestry TBZ.
Now, because this is sort of late breaking news, we would typically, if we move toward approval, we would ask staff to include urban forestry conditions, notwithstanding the fact that you may well have resolved them.
No, that's fine. I will supply to them.
It
Yeah.
would just be a case of you talking to them and getting it resolved.
You can put those in the conditions.
Yeah, good. Okay, carry on.
The minor variances are, again, in keeping with what I'm doing on 283 to the south of me in terms of the side yard setbacks, distance in the front. I've kept the whole streetscape in the same line. That's why I'm doing the projects together so that they all look equal from 281, 283, 287. So I'm trying to keep an even look. And the height is the same also. They're roughly about the same height.
Mm-hmm.
Similar style of buildings. It's just I've got a set of semis and a set of detaches. Different product for different people.
And you've got a little bit more frontage here than you had at 283.
A little bit more, correct, yeah. That's a 50-foot lot, which gives me the allowance to put detaches in. There was a request from planning to reduce the overall length from 18.22 meters down to 18 meters, which I accommodated for them. That's it.
That's it? Any
Pretty
questions?
much, yeah.
Just one question.
Yes.
I know the answer, but I got to ask. Why not semis on this lot, which you would have had a lot fewer variances, and you wouldn't have the what I consider insufficient 4-foot spacing between the two detached?
Again, just to give difference of product for people.
I mean, basically, it's profit margin. You're going to do better with two.
Not really profit margin because it costs me more to build detaches, so it's just reflective in the price. It's just giving more product because I build a lot in Etobicoke, and I get a lot of people asking me for semis, and I got a lot of people asking me for detaches. So I got to mix the product up to have availability for them.
Yeah, I get that. But if I was buying this, I'd feel like I'd be moving into a semi anyway.
Believe it or not, that 2 feet makes a big difference for people. They just feel like they have their own house. Yeah, I've got, I talk to my customers, and some of them swear by a semi, and others won't buy one no matter what. So.
Yeah, I think semis have a bad reputation from the old days when they weren't soundproofed.
That is correct. Not just that. A lot of the older semis in the 70s were built with the garages on the outside and doors in the center. So you're coming out and your neighbor's right beside you. And you can't differentiate between. When I build my semis, I put the doors on the outside. So the cars see each other, but the neighbors don't. So sometimes it's nice. I just want to get out of my house and get in my car. I don't want to.
No, I get it. It's just a personal pet peeve that, we're leaving so little space in the suburbs, and we're almost recreating downtown in the suburbs with these new detached houses, which are,
Correct. You are. There's different opinions for both, but I just listen to my customers, and some are adamant they want detaches, so I want to give them different product.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I knew the answer, but I didn't ask.
No, there isn't. As a matter of fact, there's support letters, and we don't have anybody, Adam, certainly nobody in the room. I don't have to ask that question.
To the best of my knowledge, we do not have anyone. But again,
no one online.
My attendees list is missing this item.
Okay, so then we're safe to go into committee and make a decision. Let's do that.
Planning is not opposing this one, so just.
No, they're not.
But given my earlier comments, I don't feel I'm the one that can wholeheartedly move a motion, so I'm going to wait.
Okay.
I'm happy to attempt this motion. So in terms of the consent to sever, this will be incorporated into the motion. So I think it does meet the 4 tests. It is certainly desirable. So the people on the street seem to like you very much as a builder. So it's therefore desirable for the community and for the development of the land. So I am going to make a motion for approval subject to condition ECS conditions, transportation conditions, heritage conditions, and urban forestry conditions numbers 2 and 3.
And 1.
Oh, sorry, 1, missed 1.
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. Oh, yeah, okay. Right, numbers 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so that motion would be with respect to the consent and both of the minor variance applications.
And the variances as revised.
Yes, and the variances are revised. Yes. Okay, so we have a mover. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Mr. Dalton, all in favor? Sorry, Natalia, I can't see you. Unanimously approved? Yeah. Okay. Okay, Nick.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Okay, finally, and then we'll take a break. Item 14 is 13 Brussels Street, application for consent to minor variance applications, 1 for each part. The agent is Franco Bellini, and we have been able to connect with Mr. Bellini.
They have logged in. We'll do a quick mic check right now. Mic check for Franco Bellini. Frank, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect, loud and clear. Thank you. All right.
That's good. Glad to hear from you. So just before we ask you to reintroduce yourself and give us your address, just a quick summary on these three applications, one consent, two minor variances. We have urban forestry conditions 1, 2, 3. We have engineering and construction services and transportation services conditions. We have a clearance letter from planning. We have a letter of concern from 11B, Brussels Street. And that's it. So, Mr. Bellini, please present your case to us.
Okay, I know probably this has gone a little bit far this morning, but I just want to, if I can, just make a short presentation. Basically, I want to say that, you know, if you look at items 1 to 8, these variances are almost exactly the same as what you would find on the neighboring properties, number 11A and B, and number 15A and B. The only ones that are slightly different is number 9 and 10, which was actually, I have to admit, a surprise to me, but it's basically generated from the fact, if you look at the site plan, I should also point out, I did design number 11A and B a while ago, and also went for the variances and committee for 15A and B. Different owners, but I just want to point out that the only little minor change in the rear deck was that I covered over the walkout landing that goes to the basement, and that triggered those 9 and 10. So in my estimation, I feel that they're very minor, but if it's major to you, I can eliminate them if necessary, but I thought it would be better for weather and so forth. So I'm open to any questions you may have regarding my proposal. And I also want to point out there's no front yard setback issue. There's no rear yard setback issue. There's no exterior side or side yard setback. It's just the between the buildings, which we have 1.2, but it's between the two. It's more like a maintenance setback there. But again, it's identical to the neighboring properties on both 11A and 15A and B. I'm open to any questions you have.
Yeah, any questions for Mr. Bellini?
Same question. Yep. Why not 2 semis?
Again, the client wanted it this way just to, again, imitate what was happening on either side. It could have went that way. If it went originally with 11A and B, probably this would have been the same. We back on to townhouses behind us. I mean, ideally, if it was one owner, maybe we would have attempted to go to townhouses. So, but at this point, that's where we stand.
Okay. Ms. Popovic.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You had a question?
Yeah. One question, Mr. Agent. We got in the additional materials recently a letter of objection or concern from one of the neighbors about a tree. Can you address what's happening with the tree?
Yes.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. The tree in question, by the way, we don't own it. It's actually on the neighbor's side, the rear neighbor, the townhouse, that one tree. But I'm sure the owner, I discussed it with him just briefly. If they want us to trim it, I'm sure he will abide and be a good neighbor and try to accommodate.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions for Mr. Bellini? So we have Andrea Samponia.
Mr. Chair, before we do, did you,
Yeah.
Mr. Dalton, have a question? Mr. Dalton.
So did you submit did you go to the Committee of Adjustment for 15A and B? Did you submit those decisions? Do we have those?
I didn't submit them. I'm sure the planners know about it.
Yeah, that's.
Can we see
15A
those as well?
15A and B should have really been semis from what I'm looking at. They're so close together.
Mr. Chair, members, I can confirm,
closest to
my
being-
colleague is going to dig up those decisions right now as fast as possible.
Thank you.
If I may, I just want to point out that the bylaw was a little bit different when I went to committee before. There was, I think, a little less variances. 9 and 10 didn't exist, those variances that came into the new bylaw.
So predates 569. So it's a Etobicoke code. Okay. Both, please.
Is he the agent for the applicant? Or is he representing himself?
My colleague also notes they will be up on screen shortly.
He's the agent for the applicant.
All right, so firstly, here is one of the items.
Let's just let me look at the notice.
$15.
Yeah, he's the agent. Brussels 13 Inc. is the owner. So this is the previous decision we're looking at?
Same?
So this one is 238.2. And the frontage, 15 is 762, and he's looking for 769.
So similar.
Okay, should we proceed along then? So I understand we have one virtual participant.
That is correct, Mr.
Andrea
Chair.
Samponia.
And they are unmuted.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, I'm available. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay,
If you could
great.
just
Thank
repeat
you.
your name and give us your address before you continue
Sure,
speaking.
absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Andrea Samponia. I'm the co-owner of 11B Brussels, along with Sarah Liberatori. We abut on the east side of the subject property. Let me begin by stating that we have no objection to the development. In fact, we welcome the redevelopment of the property. What we request is that the development is in keeping with what's currently built on either side of the property. And I was heartened by the comments of Mr. Bellini. There are a few specific requests or suggestions that we would like to make or propose for the committee's consideration that we believe will enhance both the development as well as the neighborhood. And specifically the areas in which I want to address are the setbacks, height, side yards, front and back, or the front porch, rear deck. the trees. Again, also tied in with the email that you received from Sarah dated May 31st. Want to speak to drainage as well as construction management plan. Now, according to the cover letter of the application and what we heard from Mr. Bellini a few moments ago, cover letter speaks to the fact that the proposed lot size, frontage, area are identical to both east and west neighboring properties. The proposed side yard setbacks are identical to the next door neighbor properties, and the proposed minor variance for coverage and soffit height are actually equal or lower than both 11B and 15B Brussels Street. The applicant goes on to write that also the proposed height of the main pedestrian entrance is in keeping with both neighbors and is one step lower in height. The applicant notes in the application itself, we're trying to match the existing severances and setbacks of existing houses and lot conditions on either side of the lot. We agree that the proposed development should match the existing height, setbacks, and lot conditions of the recently constructed development on either side. Unfortunately, it's hard for me to tell from the site plan and the elevations included with the application if this is in fact the case. We ask that the front and back setbacks, side yards, and the height of the proposed development line up and match the adjacent properties, and specifically the front porch, the rear walls, and the deck of each building lining up with their respective adjacent properties as well. We also ask that the front porch and the rear deck is either equal or lower in height in order to minimize overlook on the neighboring properties and to be more proportionate with the side and front or the front and back yards. With regard to the trees issue, according to the arborist report, it's proposed that the Chinese elms along the rear property line be retained. Now, Mr. Bellini just mentioned right now that it's not on the property. That wasn't our impression looking at the tree. However, as Sarah Liberatore mentioned in her email to the committee, which is contained in the documents from May 31st, the tree or the trees significantly overhang onto our property, with many of the branches being dead. It does pose a substantial liability risk, according to our insurance company. We've been unable to contact the property owner and the applicant over the last 2+ years to address the issue, and we ask that the applicant be ordered again to prune the trees, remove dead branches, and remove all the branches overhanging onto our property, again, as a condition of consent, and we respectfully ask that it be done as soon as possible. Again, Mr. Bellini's comment that the tree isn't on their property, but the owner would be happy to do that, would be agreeable to do that, is good news to us, and obviously ask and encourage the committee to make that order/recommendation. In addition, it's also proposed in the arborist report that there's a white cedar hedge along the east property line and that it be removed. And we ask that post-construction, the hedge be replaced with a new hedge, again, to minimize overlook. And finally, I respectfully recommend that a municipal tree be added to the front of both new properties to add to the tree canopy that exists on the street. Again, should consent be granted. With regard to the issue of grading, we ask that the existing drainage pattern be maintained with the property level to existing and abutting properties with split lot drainage. And we ask to be provided with a copy of the drainage plan once submitted.
Sorry, Mr. Samponia, you'll have to wrap up your overtime.
Yep, thank you for your patience. We would be happy to meet with the applicant to discuss the drainage plan. And the final point I'd like to make with regard, it's my understanding that the city typically requires a construction management plan to be submitted with building applications. And if that is in fact the case, we ask that the plan be designed and obviously followed to minimize the impact on surrounding properties in the neighborhood. Again, the street's narrow, it's a dead-end street. There are many children in the neighborhood, and we would ask that the construction management plan be sensitive to this. As noted earlier, we believe these suggestions would enhance both the project and the neighborhood. We would be happy to meet with the applicant to discuss further. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, can I have a quick answer to one question? Have you had any conversation whatsoever with Mr. Bellini on your comprehensive list of suggestions and requests?
No, I've not aware of Mr. Bellini's existence until getting the documentation or the notice of this meeting.
Okay, well, we'll see how he handles his rebuttal, but you've certainly given him a lot of material to consider. Are there any questions for Mr. Samponia before we? No? Okay, Mr. Bellini, are you in a position to respond to a tremendous amount of information that has been provided by Mr. Samponia in the last several minutes?
Okay, I just, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I don't mind meeting with him later on, but right now I can just answer to say that, yes, we will take care of grading. In fact, if you look at our plan, it includes grading because we needed that for zoning to figure out the average height. And I am going to be pretty much the same, but I can't say exact to the neighbors as far as front yard setback, side, exterior side, interior side, and rear. The deck is similar to the in size to the neighbor and even smaller than the neighbor to 15A, and so maybe we're a little bit bigger than their deck, but it's equal, and we're just over by a very minor amount. As far as the trees, I'm sure the owner would work to do whatever is allowable, maybe trim whatever is allowable by forestry. I'm not quite sure if I can commit to anything right now because I don't know what the bylaw. I know that you can cut limbs that are onto your property from a neighboring property, from a neighboring property, but I don't know the full ramifications. So I can't promise, but I can say that I can meet and discuss what we can do later on as far as which case I can find out more about this tree bylaw.
Okay.
So that's.
But in the meantime, I take it you wish to proceed with the variances that you've set out in the notice.
Yes, and I just want to point out, I knew the previous owner, the lady, actually, she passed away, and the house was abandoned for quite a long time. So I understand why he couldn't get a hold of the neighbor.
Yeah.
And but my number is in the documents, and if he wants to get a hold of me, I'm open to discuss anything he has with either neighbor.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay. No other speakers?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
All righty. So I think we can go into committee then and discuss and decide.
While committee is in committee, I want to bring to attention folks that are on the line and that are here for the 1 p.m. session. We're just about to wrap up the 9:30 a.m. session, so we'll let you know when the 1 p.m. session will start.
I'll go. Thanks. Spread it around a little bit.
Mr. Komorek.
I guess, I have similar thoughts about this one as I did the previous one. For me, it'd be more appropriate to have two semis on this lot, considering the majority of this neighborhood is townhouses. But given that in terms of the immediate context, that the two adjacent properties are already built this way. It seems more than logical to continue that same pattern and infill the missing piece in between with something quite similar. So having said all that, I believe it does constitute good planning. The variances meet the four tests. And I'd like to move approval subject to forestry conditions 1, 2, and 3, engineering and construction services conditions of severance, transportation conditions, and I believe that's it.
That is it. No. Is there a seconder for Mr. Komorik's motion?
Go ahead.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Alderson. All in favor? That is unanimously approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Bellini and Mr. Samponio. So we will now adjourn an hour and a quarter, 2:30.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So the 1 p.m. session will begin at 2:30 with a microphone check starting at 2:15. Again, the microphone check will start at 2:15, and the 1 p.m. session for the June 6th meeting will begin at 2:30.